Anyways, I want to welcome everyone to this special episode of Making the Argument, where we're going to be watching Trump's address to a joint session of Congress. What kind of a State of the Union, kind of not. That's kind of,
It's a little early for State of the Union, but Mike Johnson actually said normally we wait a year to do this invite, but he's gotten so much done in this amount of time that we decided we'd have him come and talk about it because there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
so I think that's actually not a bad strategy.
No, not at all.
Not only that, but there were some things that transpired from the time that we recorded earlier today, our episode of the day.
Yeah.
To now. Zelensky came back hat in hand. I'm pretty sure he made it all the way back to the U.S. begging to sign the deal. And I'm pretty sure he signed the deal, and Trump's going to be announcing it. That's
we'll
at least the speculation. So we'll find out if that happened. And it's so funny because the Democrats keep flipping out. Every time Trump does anything, they're like, he's going to ruin everything. He's going to cause World War III, or everything's bad. Everything's going so bad. And then all of a sudden, everybody comes to the table and agrees to do whatever Trump says.
Yeah.
And it's every time Trump's like, well, you had your chance. We're done. And everyone has a meltdown. And then lo and behold, they come hat in hand to say, we'd really like to go ahead and do the deal that you had originally given to us. It's almost as if this guy could write a book about the art of the deal or something, right? Isn't he known for this? When is the left going to learn that, you probably should wait to have your meltdown to see what happens in 3 days so that you don't have to put your foot in your mouth so many times. But
yeah,
I mean, so far, they have not learned this lesson.
Well, for everyone that is tuning in for the first time, I am the host of Making the Argument, Nick Freitas. You were just listening to my beautiful bride, Tina, Queen of the Bees. And also in the studio, we have our co-host, a resident historian, political prognosticator, and Oracle of Virginia. That title was given to him by Christian Hines. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing okay. How about you?
Good. Yeah, earlier today, we actually shot our kind of our regularly scheduled podcast that just went out talking about everything that happened with Zelensky in the White House and the kind of the blow up that took place and why it took place. And we did something that we think is kind of unique. We actually tried to understand it from various perspectives. We looked at it from the perspective of Ukraine, Russia, the EU, and the United States. But basically came to the conclusion that, overall, you don't have to necessarily like everything that transpired that day, but Trump was right in his assessment. So was J.D. Vance. And we even saw people who were, I think very highly of Konstantin Christin, who's a big supporter of Ukraine and who initially was very, very kind of, he had a problem with how that entire transaction took place. But then he went back and watched the entire 40-minute interview and came back and did another video that said, look, Zelensky kind of screwed this up, right? It's when you're coming to the Oval Office, you probably shouldn't be deliberately trying to antagonize the very people that you're depending upon for a deal. And I think he got some, again, I think this is 4 years of Zelensky getting propped up no matter where he goes. And I think it's also members of the press trying to convince Zelensky to essentially go around the president right to the American people. And I think Zelensky learned fairly quickly that he is not more popular with the American people than Donald Trump or J.D. Vance is. And ultimately, the real politique, right, the situation on the ground is they need support from the United States. They shouldn't need it. They should be able to get it all from the EU and the UK, all the countries that, again, probably have the most at stake here with respect to Russia and the security of Europe. But unfortunately, those countries have oftentimes prioritized other things as opposed to national security or continental security. They've focused more on a welfare state. And so they find themselves in a position where...
In their defense, they were tweeting really nice things to Zelensky, and that's helpful.
Yeah, that's helpful.
So helpful.
That's what he needs right now.
I think he
nice
looked at how
it's
much...
that soft power that we were all, told about.
U.S. has done $350 billion. He goes running around to the UK and I think did he drum up like $1 billion? Yeah. I think he wants America's help again. So.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think the important thing, and we pointed this out too, it's like this isn't about, because this is one thing the press loves to say is that anytime Trump doesn't offer Zelensky anything he wants, it's like, oh, you want Putin to win or you're a shill for Putin. No, I don't think Trump wants Putin to win. I think Trump wants the fighting to stop in Ukraine because there's a lot of other issues, a lot of other geopolitical considerations we need to take into account.
Yeah, God forbid he wants the people to stop dying.
Yeah.
you know?
Well, to give everyone an idea of kind of how we're going to run this tonight, I'm excited to see everyone joining us. Really appreciate that. If you get a chance and you're so inclined, please feel free to like and subscribe. It's always very helpful. But we're obviously going to watch this as it's going, right? And so every once in a while, we might pause. We might answer some questions. We might give some commentary or analysis based off of what the president is saying. But the goal is going to be to kind of let this flow along. We don't want to interrupt the president too much as he's speaking, but we also think that it's probably, you know, if there's something that comes out that we want to draw a special point or special attention to, then
It'll be a
we'll
live react. So by the time we end, we'll be ending later than his address if we're going to be interrupting it a little bit. But
what'll end up happening is he will say something, and either Christian or myself will probably want to wax intellectual for about 5 minutes on how, you remember when the Yuan dynasty in China actually did something, and Tina's going to be like, you guys suck. Can we please get back to listening to the president?
Yeah.
And then we'll get a little bit offended. We might get our feelings hurt a little bit. Christian might cry a little bit.
It's just a little
bit. No, probably not. And then we'll get back to it. But again, if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat.
But you will come away with some great history insights from Christian. You'll understand this so much better having Christian to explain a lot of these things than you would have if you just watched it on your own. I'm willing to put money on that.
Well, here's a question. What do you guys, okay, real quick, you each get 60 seconds. What do you anticipate the president is going to speak on tonight? Christian, go.
He'll talk briefly about Ukraine. He'll talk about deregulations. He'll talk about Doge. He might briefly mention tariffs. And he'll say something along the lines of, the United States is not going to be bullied around by people anymore around the world. We're putting America first. That's my guess.
Okay.
I would say the same, but there are also a couple of deals that the U.S. just has made in the past few days that are going to bring a lot of jobs here. There are various companies that are bringing jobs back here. There's a microchip company bringing, I think it was like $100 billion worth of business here. And then there were car company that's moving from Mexico to here. So there's several different things. I think he might also talk about some nuclear energy options that are kind of in the works, maybe, and maybe some drilling or maybe some pipelines.
Yeah. So no, I think there's going to be something of a quick victory lap, and I think that goes to Tina's point about illustrating specific wins that have taken place, and that might have to do with things. I think he's definitely going to talk about the border. I think he's going to talk about border security, probably some aspect with deportation, especially focusing on those deportations, which are of, violent criminals. Obviously, foreign policy and talking about international deals. I think he's going to talk about some of the wins there as well. I think highlighting specific, businesses moving back to the United States or expanding the United States will probably be part of it. And then I think Doge as well. I think highlighting some of the most ridiculous spending that has been identified within Doge. And that kind of leads me to E. Parody. Thank you very much for the super chat. He goes, I think you're buying into a larger agenda that is consolidating power as opposed to draining the swamp. Still appreciate your take on current events. No, thank you very much. Here's what I'll say on that. I actually, because there's been some concern that, is Trump really trying to reduce the size of government, or is he just simply trying to consolidate power or staff instead of reducing the bureaucracy? Is he just trying to basically staff it with his people? And I think a couple things can be true at once. I do think Trump wants the people that are going to support his policy agenda within the bureaucracy, within the executive branch. And I actually think that's a fairly reasonable request, right? But the other thing that I see is I honestly do believe he is trying to significantly reduce the bureaucracy. I think we had a report come out today from the recently confirmed Secretary of Education, who is basically preparing the agency in order to eventually dissolve. Here's the deal, and this is something we're going to be going up to. I'm going up to D.C. tomorrow. I'm going to be talking with some members of Congress up there about things that are taking place. And I know one of the things I've pushed on is like, look, the executive branch can only do so much when it comes to reducing the bureaucracy. They can freeze payments. That doesn't mean they can automatically reallocate funds to other agencies. They can reduce the size of the bureaucracy, but ultimately they can't just arbitrarily get rid of federal agencies or departments which have been authorized by Congress. That's going to require congressional action. Now, the thing I've been concerned about this entire time is I think the executive branch to date has worked at breakneck pace to try to identify needed cuts within the bureaucracy and within the executive branch. So I think they're setting it up to actually cut, not just move around or not just replace one bureaucrat with a different bureaucrat. Congress is going to need to act. So you have Pete Sessions, Congressman Pete Sessions, who's the head of the DOJ committee within Congress. We're going to be talking to him in the next couple of weeks. You also have members of the Senate that are dedicated to this. But one of the biggest things to watch out for is any Republican that tells you, well, we would really like to do more, but we have really slim majorities, and so it's difficult. So maybe after midterms, maybe when we pick up more seats. That's the part that will tell me that they're not serious, or that certain members of Congress aren't serious. Because and look, it's a legitimate concern, right? Do you have the House? Do you have the Senate? Do you have the presidency? Do you have a friendly Supreme Court? The answer to all four of those questions now is yes. For the next 2 years, we have those things. And so Congress is going to need to act and not come up with different excuses on why they can't do it. So again, I appreciate the concern and especially the desire to want to try to make sure that we're actually reducing the size of the bureaucracy. We're actually draining the swamp. Not just moving around deck chairs on the Titanic. And so far, I'm really giving the president a lot of credit on this. But the concern with respect to whether or not Congress will act, absolutely essential here. Absolutely essential. Again,
we all saw with Obamacare back in the day when we had the trifecta before, and they all kind of peed the bed, and it was awful. Yeah. And we don't want to see that happen again, but Congress is going to Congress, and they have a tendency to do this and worry more about their next election than they do doing the right thing.
T-Bird Dev said, thank you for the super chat. He says he dumped people from agencies that actually serve the public, i.e. FAA, VA, forestry, and not policymakers.
Everything is a policy-making agency.
I'm going to tell you this. I think that we can debate on whether or not certain individuals were actually doing a good job or earnestly trying to do their job. Nobody's going to convince me that every single one of these federal agencies is working at peak capacity and that every single one of the positions that are in there is necessary. I'm sorry. I'm at a point right now where, having served in government for, when I was in the military, having served as an elected official in a state legislature for 10 years, there's a lot of waste. There's just absolutely a lot of waste. And again, to your point, that doesn't mean that I have ill will toward, every single federal employee that has lost their job or has been told that they're not going to be hired off of their probationary period. But I think the thing we need to keep in mind here is we're $38 trillion in debt. And there's a lot of agencies that you've got to look at this stuff and ask yourself, okay, are all of these agencies legitimate functions of government? And then specifically within those agencies, are all of the positions legitimate functions of government? And I think one of the things that we've seen, especially with identifying problems within DOJ, is that there's a lot of money being wasted on overhead, on administration, a lot of in the form of grants to some of these 501c3s or NGOs, which, we're getting a much clearer picture of a lot of the things that we suspected. And that is that a lot of woke ideology is being pushed through federal spending, through grants and everything else, which, I'm sorry, but you're not going to convince me that that's legitimate functions of government. What that is one side of the political spectrum getting to finance jobs and set up a system of patronage and everything else in order to advance their ideological agenda, not carry out the executive functions of government. David Francis says, question, Christian, are you okay? I think he's worried, man. You seem a little...
I'm fine.
Seem a little down right now.
Hamilton sent us another link just to see if we wanted to use that one. I'm not sure. This other link is just showing everybody show up.
Okay.
They're not actually doing anything just yet.
One, yeah. So Ben Farr said we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I go back to this. I am looking. I don't know if you guys are checking
Some
this.
baths don't belong in government.
There's two things I want to point out here. One is when I go and I look at what DOJ is doing on a daily basis, because they are posting the receipts of the stuff that they're canceling. And keep in mind, DOJ doesn't cancel any of these jobs. DOJ doesn't fire people. DOJ makes recommendations. And obviously, those executive branch agencies are working closely with DOJ in order to identify what positions should be cut or what spending should be cut or what should be frozen. But I'm looking at this stuff, and I can honestly say, I ran into somebody the other day, former Marine Corps combat veteran who was working in USAID. And look, he was a little bit frustrated, but he was still generally supportive of what the Trump administration is trying to accomplish. And again, this is the thing I keep going back to is you look at some of the positions that are being lost within these federal agencies, and I'm sorry, we either can't afford it at this point, or we have to ask the question on some of these is, why do these federal agencies exist in the first place? Go read Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, and go look at what the federal government is supposed to be responsible for, and then go look at the size of the federal bureaucracy and tell me that matches up. It clearly doesn't. Now, one of the things I want to make very clear here is just because a position no longer exists at the federal government doesn't mean an important task can't still be performed. Sometimes it can be performed in the private sector. Sometimes it can be performed at the state level. Sometimes it can be performed at the private level or at the, at the local level. But this idea that we have to maintain, like at the Department of Education, first of all, show me in the Constitution, show me in Article 1, Section 8, where education is a function of the federal government. You're not going to find it. And yet what we found with the Department of Education with massive bureaucracy, 4,400 employees, billions of dollars, has education improved? No. So one of the things I want to point out here is we're now starting to see people.
These are just people
we're seeing people enter here.
in.
We can put them on the screen.
There's this other issue. There's this other issue, and that's the idea. And we've talked about this earlier today. One of the things that a bureaucracy does is they attempt to convince you that the thing that they're taxing, regulating, or otherwise, interfering with is the thing itself, like that the agency is the thing itself. The Department of Agriculture is not out there running farms. The Department of Education is not out there teaching kids. They're regulating. They may be providing guidance. They may be allocating funds toward particular functions. But then we just have to ask the question, well, okay, how much overhead is associated with that? How happy are we with the result of this federal agency existing and doing these things? Is there a better, more efficient, more effective way to do it? And I think the answer that we're finding over and over is yes, there is. So, yeah.
Okay, so first take of the night. Do you remember all the white everybody was wearing last time?
That was a long time
remember
ago.
when last time Trump did this address, all of the women were wearing white and Nancy Pelosi shredded his speech. Remember that?
That wasn't the last time.
That was, I believe, right after the 2018 midterms.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
They might have done it again.
It was
though.
after the 2018
All I
midterms
know
because Nancy Pelosi was speaking.
is that they were all dressing in order to send a message. And what I'm noticing now is I don't know if they have totally thrown that out or if all the people wearing red are some kind of Handmaid's Tale thing or what.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I did see a few.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, singing ready, yeah.
There's Usha.
Do I have what?
Yeah, I have it.
Okay.
For this, I have it muted. I mean, if you want me to turn it on. I've got 2 links up. One's from the White House that hasn't actually.
Okay, Ben, I don't understand this. Privatizing education would be a huge mistake, widening the gap between have and have not. When you privatize rights, you destroy opportunity. Rights are private. Like a right is something that you inherently have. The government's responsibility is to protect the rights that you have, not like I don't even understand what that means. And when it comes to private education, you're honestly telling me that private education robs people of rights? How? How does that done? Mega Flash, thank you for the super chat. Said being told that they are cutting too much while personally believing Doge isn't cutting enough is a wild experience. Yeah. No, definitely. Well, and again, you look at what Doge is focused on so far. A lot of it has to do with like DEI spending that has been taking place. A lot of it has to do with these random contracts that were going out to NGOs that were.
Some of these things just aren't a function of government, and it's. I'm sorry if you're a really good person who worked in this area, but that specific organization just isn't a function of government, and we have to get rid of it. And so at that point, I'm sorry if you were a good worker and if you had the right outlook on things, you were working for the wrong organization.
Yeah, remember it says if rights are private, why do you need a government to protect them? No, okay. So governments are established among men in order to protect natural rights, or those rights which already exist, along with providing other what we might, debate about are legitimate functions of government. The idea that just because something is good, therefore the government needs to provide it makes absolutely zero sense within a free society. If you're saying that we have to have the government running education in order for people to have access to education, I'm going to point out that that's obviously not true because we have any number of people, and I'm not just talking about rich people, that are able to provide for education. But the other thing that I'm going to point out is that just like we understand that there is a problem with state-run media, because state-run media has a hard time being objective when the government is doing things that it shouldn't be doing, I'm going to point out that state-run education at least has the potential of achieving the same poor results. And one of the things that we've been seeing in government-run education, because that's what it is, it's not just public education. A public road is somebody that essentially anybody can use. Not anybody can use a public school. It is a government-run school, all right? I'm going to point out that I see some real problems with respect to the government, administering education. Now, if we want to have a larger debate on whether or not the government can provide support to ensure that, people from poor families or backgrounds can have access to education, I'm happy to have that debate. But I'm not going to concede that because something might be a positive, i.e. education, therefore the government must run it. I think we see all kinds of examples throughout history of the government trying to say, okay, let me give you an example. It's a public good, being able to have access to food. Would you want the government to run your farms and grocery stores? I certainly wouldn't. We have plenty of examples throughout history of the government collectivizing and trying to centrally plan economies and run, the agriculture and everything else. And it doesn't lead to greater abundance for everybody to be able to have some of it. It generally leads to starvation. And then it also leads to purges and control, because when the more the government gets to control, the less your voice is within the government. Because even though you can say, oh, well, it's collectively owned, or it's publicly subsidized, or it's publicly run, therefore we all have a say through the vote. Well, that's cute, but in reality, that's not exactly how it works. Chris, is it Chris Chivas? Thank you very much for the super chat. As a right-leaning Canadian, I'm disappointed Trump couldn't wait till we got rid of our liberal government before all hell broke loose with these tariffs. I agree with the initial asks, but in another month or so, we'll have a party aligned with Republican values. Chris, look, I think that's fair. I understand the frustration. I know that, Trump's currently dealing with Trudeau, and I think you guys have a real opportunity with Polyev over there. He seems to be a very, very bright guy. I've listened to a lot of his speeches. I've listened to a lot of his policy discussions. He certainly handles the press very well. And you would be hard pressed to find a guy that's better on the parliament floor when debating with the left. So I'll just say this: as much as I understand what President Trump is trying to achieve with trade renegotiations taking place, with trade renegotiations taking place pretty much all over the place. I also understand the frustration of, because right now it appears that Polyev's lead in the polls has diminished fairly significantly.
It's evaporated.
Yeah. I mean, okay, Mr. Doom and Gloom over there, how many polls have actually come up? Because I saw like one, the ISOPS poll or something.
Give me just a few minutes, not even a few minutes. Give me a few seconds and I'll be able to tell you.
Yeah.
Here it is. There have been couple polls.
Yeah.
Ledger had the Conservatives up by 3. That was February 23rd. Ecos actually had the Liberals up by 1.5.
Yeah.
That was February 24th. Innovative Research had the Conservatives up by 9.
Speaker, the President of the United States.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, here we go. But Chris, just to say,
It's pretty close.
I can appreciate the frustration. I really can on that, because I do want you guys to get rid of Trudeau. I think it'd be better for everyone. And then you'll be all right. Thank you for the super chat. Said Dems are trying to pick up on constitutional iconography. Some of the Dems are seen wearing "We the People" shirts. How do we let the regular public know they're full of it? I think one of the things is to point out that it's one thing to just, I actually saw somebody at one of these weird left-wing rallies with a "Don't Tread on Me" flag. And again, this is what the left typically tends to do. When something becomes popular in the general public, they attempt to take it for themselves and then reapply it in ways that don't really make sense. And part of what that is an education factor. It's another reason why I'm very skeptical of government education, because I see what's happening to our kids over time when they're kind of being taught a version of American history or a version of what the Constitution means, what federalism means. I don't feel like it bears any resemblance to reality. But the only way that you're going to be able to combat that is one of two ways. One, taking greater control with respect to your own kids' education and being able to inform friends and family when these issues come up. but also it's what President Trump and Doge is doing right now, right? There's a reason why the left is so furious about this idea of the bureaucracy losing this power or all of this funding going away. And it is precisely because for all the talk about things like, government education, making sure that everybody gets a fair shot, what we end up seeing is left-wing ideology working its way into the schools. So we'll have a school where the reading scores are not improving, the math scores are not improving, but the amount of money we're spending per pupil, the amount of money we're spending on administration, that's all going up significantly at the same time that now your daughter is forced to get undressed in front of a boy in the locker room because he now identifies as a girl. You're telling me that's a proper application of government run education or education funding? So I mean,
every time there's more funding, also most of that funding goes to the bureaucracy, which is getting cut.
Yeah.
So the bureaucracy siphons off more money than teachers are not getting wage increases that matches the amount of money that's getting dumped in there. It's more and more and more bureaucrats at every single level who are siphoning off most of that money.
Yeah. So I think, again, I think to your larger point, it really comes with being able to point to the hypocrisy with some of these things and demonstrate that if you're going to wear a "We the People" T-shirt, well, then I want you to explain what exactly that means. And usually just the simple question of what does that mean to you usually reveals pretty quick that, yeah. Chris says, don't believe the Canadian polls. No different than Kamala's run at the end of Trump in the polls when you all went to the voting booth. Go, Pierre. Yeah, again, Chris, we are polling for Polyev.
Even though he's pretty mad at us right now, and
yeah.
he's very not pro-America. I mean, he came out with some statements.
Can we blame him?
No, I mean, can't really blame him, but I mean, he's kind of got to say that. I mean, he's trying to make sure he doesn't alienate anybody in his country. He needs all the votes he can get, so I totally get it.
Yeah, yeah. P7 2017 said the part about the doctrine going into the schools is the long game of the Frankfurt School. I see somebody has read Marcuse. Yeah, no, we were actually talking about that earlier. When you read Gramsci, when you read Marcuse, when you read what's his name, the student activist in Germany that
Rudy
Dutschke, who actually I think coined the term the long march through the institutions. Right, this was part of kind of a strategy of left-wing ideology, and this was the idea that the reason why leftism hadn't been as successful in the West as they anticipated it would be was because there was this larger culture that supported Western notions of private property, capitalism, free markets, et cetera, and that the way that they were going to be able to undo that was that they had to take over culturally shaping institutions. And what we're seeing is that the bureaucracy was a very effective way to achieve that. All right, let's go ahead and start to watch here. Thank you, Rob.
See all the Democrats sitting down?
Yeah, that's just the typical political theater, though.
Look at the stark divide in the room.
Yeah. I mean, I got to say, I've sat through a lot of the State of the Commonwealth addresses when the governor gets up. And typically what you see is when the governor first comes up, everyone's standing, everyone's clapping, everyone's kind of, collegial. And then it becomes the game of, did we like what he said? Did we not like what he said? And if the opposing party's governor, you don't stand up and clap as much. If it's your side's governor, you get up and clap a lot.
Yeah, but in the case of Trump, they're not going to agree with anything.
No, I mean, you see it every once in a while.
They'll take the side of the 20%.
No, what it is that usually when you're introducing somebody in the gallery that has, anyway, here we go.
I'm just talking about this.
Yeah.
Speaker Johnson, Vice President Vance, the First Lady of the United States.
All right, Tina, what do you think of the outfit?
I think she's always well dressed.
Members of the United States Congress, thank you very much. And to my fellow citizens, America is back.
You notice he doesn't wear the red tie as often anymore?
Oh, I didn't notice that.
He wore it in his meeting with
Yeah,
Zelensky. I'm surprised the Democrats actually showed up for.
Yeah.
6 weeks ago, I stood beneath the dome of this Capitol and proclaimed the dawn of the golden age of America. From that moment on, it has been nothing but swift and unrelenting action to usher in the greatest and most successful era in the history of our country. We have accomplished more in 43 days than most administrations accomplished in 4 years or 8 years, and we are just getting started.
I will say, oh, there's Doug LaMalfa. And oh, there's John McGuire. Oh, man. I will say, it is the pace at which they've moved so far is really impressive.
News cycle can't even keep up.
No.
I return to this chamber tonight to report that America's momentum is back, our spirit is back, our pride is back, our confidence is back, and the American dream is surging bigger and better than ever before. The American dream is unstoppable, and our country is on the verge of a comeback, the likes of which the world has never witnessed and perhaps will never witness again.
Well, I hope, yeah.
Never been anything like it. The presidential election of November 5th was a mandate like has not been seen in many decades. We won all 7 swing states, giving us an electoral college victory of 312 votes.
I got to say, too, if you want to know why Christian is referred to as the Oracle of Virginia, like, 5 days before the election, he called every single swing state within 1 point. And even when I was and like Christian is not usually counted on us doing well, but like he even called Michigan.
We won the popular vote
wavered on that
by
one.
big numbers and won counties in our country.
There's
They're
Here they
upset
go.
about that. They're upset
Yeah.
about that. No, you only got 49.9% of the
Yeah.
vote.
who's that with the cane?
The guy with the cane? I don't know. I do hate the theatrics of this type of stuff. Like, just
Yeah.
let the
And
guy
won
speak.
counties in our country, 2,700 to 525. On a map that reads almost completely red for Republican.
He pointed to the guy.
I love that.
Now, for the first time in modern history, more Americans believe that our country is headed in the right direction than the wrong direction. In fact, it's an astonishing record, 27-point swing, the most ever.
Oh, they're so mad. They're
Yeah,
so
look,
mad.
he's trying to get him to, like, if you look here in the audience, he's trying to get that guy to sit down.
Likewise, small business optimism saw its single largest one-month gain ever recorded.
Mr.
A
President.
41-point jump.
Ooh, here we go.
Oh.
Members are directed to uphold and maintain decorum in the House and to cease any further disruptions. That's your warning.
Yeah, do you remember when one time a
here
Republican,
we go.
when a Republican shouted out, "You lie," and that was considered like, oh my
Members are
gosh,
engaging
I
in
can't believe
willful
he
and
would do
continuing
this.
breach of decorum,
This guy's
and
been
the
sitting here
chair is
yelling the whole
prepared
time.
To direct the sergeant at arms to restore order to the joint session.
Boom, baby. Yeah. No,
Boot
and
'em
again,
out. Boot 'em out.
anybody on the left, anybody that's going to flip out about this, I remember when, I can't remember who the congressman was, but he shouted out, "You lie," when Barack Obama said something. And that was considered this horrible breach of decorum. And that's all he did. That's all he did. This guy standing up here pointing his cane, yelling the whole time in the middle of the address. That's just ridiculous. But he's trying
Mr.
to
Green,
cause
take
a
your
scene.
seat. Take your seat, sir. Take your seat. Finding that members continue to engage in willful and concerted disruption of proper decorum, the chair now directs the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order. Remove this gentleman from the chamber.
Dude, yeah, that's
Done.
look.
Hey, you know it could be worse. Serbia, they're throwing smoke bombs and tear gas in the chamber today.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the part where again the Sergeant of Arms has got a crappy job right here. Presley, thank you very much for the super chat.
Yeah, let's just Zelensky his butt right out of there.
Members are directed to uphold and maintain decorum in the House.
Oh yeah, Joe Wilson.
Mr.
It was Joe
President,
Wilson.
continue.
Good. Thank you, reminder.
Thank you. Over the past 6 weeks, I have signed nearly 100 executive orders and taken more than 400 executive actions, a record to restore common sense, safety, optimism, and wealth all across our wonderful land. The people elected me to do the job, and I'm doing it.
Shiny Luna, that was not on my bingo card. Yeah, I don't know. I
feel like this is pretty mild so far.
well, no, that's still fairly unprecedented.
They're
I
pretty
can't remember.
angry at the fact that they didn't win the popular vote.
Yeah, yeah.
In fact, it has been stated by many that the first month of our presidency, it's our presidency, is the most successful in the history of our nation. By many. And what makes it even more impressive is that, do you know who number 2 is? George Washington. How about that? How about that?
How about that?
I don't know about that list, but we'll take it. Within hours of taking the oath of office, I declared a national emergency on our southern border, and I deployed the U.S. military and Border Patrol to repel the invasion of our country. And what a job they've done. As a result, illegal border crossings last month were by far the lowest ever recorded,
Well,
ever.
they've dropped significantly.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking like fractions of what they were before. Dalton Bland says, Nick, I must ask, how was your time amongst the toxic brood of FNT? That's Friday Night Tights with Nerdrotic. It was a lot of fun. It was a little
my
crazy, but it was
words,
fun.
and they chose not to come. Much easier that way. In comparison, under Joe Biden, the worst president in American history, there were hundreds of thousands of illegal crossings a month, and virtually all of them, including murderers, drug dealers, gang members, and people from mental institutions and insane asylums, were released into our country. Who would want to do that? This is my 5th such speech to Congress. And once again, I look at the Democrats in front of me, and I realize there is absolutely nothing I can say to make them happy or to make them stand or smile or applaud. Nothing I can do. I could find a cure to the most devastating disease, a disease that would wipe out entire nations, or announce the answers to the greatest economy in history, or the stoppage of crime to the lowest levels ever recorded. And these people sitting right here will not clap, will not stand, and certainly will not cheer for these astronomical achievements. They won't do it, no matter what. Five times I've been up here. It's very sad, and it just shouldn't be this way.
Michael Bomber says, I'm so sick and tired of the theatrics in our government from both sides. The only reason these clowns on Capitol Hill do this is to create ads for their campaigns for the next election cycle.
What's this, Musk steals?
Oh.
So
Oh,
Democrats sitting before me, for just this one night, why not join us in celebrating so many incredible wins for America? For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
Somebody came up with this and thought it was a great idea for them all to hold up these little signs.
Save Medicaid. Oh, gosh.
Oh, gosh.
They want to save their money laundering
Every day
scheme.
my administration is fighting to deliver the change America needs to bring a future that America deserves, and we're doing it. This is a time for big dreams and bold action. Upon taking office, I imposed an immediate freeze on all federal hiring, a freeze on all new federal regulations, and a freeze on all foreign aid.
Hey. I mean, again, you cannot say that is not what people voted for.
I voted for it. I know I did. How many of you guys voted for it?
I terminated the ridiculous Green New Scam. I withdrew from the unfair Paris Climate Accord, which was costing us trillions of dollars that other countries were not paying. I withdrew from the corrupt World Health Organization.
Oh, thank God.
And I also withdrew from the anti-American UN Human Rights Council.
Yeah, that was a joke. When you're having organizations that are famous for violating human rights, chairing
We ended all of
human
Biden's
rights.
environmental restrictions that were making our country far less safe and totally unaffordable. And importantly, we ended the last administration's insane electric vehicle mandate, saving our auto workers and companies from economic destruction.
Yeah, Ford was announcing that they were losing, I think it was in the...
It was like $1 billion a year
It
or
was like
something
$1 billion
like that
a year on these...
on their EVs.
Yeah, yeah. People just don't want to
To
buy.
unshackle our economy, I have directed that for every one new regulation, 10 old regulations must be eliminated, just like I did
Yes.
in my very successful first term.
I might start clapping in here. Yeah.
We did the red tape reduction in Virginia, and it was 2 for every one that you were doing. Not that that's been
And
you know,
in that
faithfully
first
implemented.
term, we set records on ending unnecessary rules and regulations like no other president had done before. We ordered all federal workers to return to the office. They will either show up for work in person or be removed from their job.
Oh, you mean like people in the private sector?
Remember when I was just joking about how I had to wake up before 2? I couldn't survive Trump's federal.
And we have ended weaponized government where, as an example, a sitting president is allowed to viciously prosecute his political opponent, like me. How did that work out?
Yeah.
Oh,
He's got his mugshot up.
This is our convict around and find.
That's right.
That was great.
He even posted his
Oh, my
mugshot
gosh.
right outside the
Yeah.
Oval Office.
This is our convict around and find out mug.
And I have stopped all government censorship and brought back free speech in America. It's back.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to hear Democrats say that it wasn't there. When you were actively using the government to deplatform people and to pressure social media companies to
And
do
2
that.
days ago, I signed an order making English the official language of the United States of America.
No.
Surprising it wasn't already.
Yeah.
It is in several states. It's
Yeah.
not at the federal level, though.
Well, it is
I
now.
renamed the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America.
You know, the AP lost their position as part of the White House press corps for refusing to call it the Gulf of America.
And likewise, I renamed for a great president, William McKinley, Mount McKinley again.
Yeah. People sometimes will ask, like, what's the big deal with this? Well, again, what was the big deal with changing
Beautiful
in the
Alaska.
first place?
We love Alaska. We've ended
Thank
the
you, Dave.
tyranny of so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion policies all across the entire federal government and indeed the private sector and our military.
Yeah. The Democrats in the General Assembly were furious
And
about
our
this session.
country will be woke no longer.
Yeah. That's definitely what I voted for.
Yep.
We believe that whether you are a doctor, an accountant, a lawyer, or an air traffic controller, You should be hired and promoted based on skill and competence, not race or gender. Very important.
Yeah, I thought we actually included that in federal law.
You should be hired based on merit. And the Supreme Court, in a brave and very powerful decision, has allowed us to do so. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. We have removed the poison of critical race theory from our public schools, and I signed an order making it the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and then Democrats just voted. Every single
needing something
every
like
single
that.
Senate Democrat.
Fetterman, by the way.
Yeah, every single Senate Democrat voted against the bill to actually protect women's sports. I mean,
And
just
yet
think about
they're
how
all
absurd
wearing
that is.
pink for women.
I also signed an executive order to ban men from playing in women's sports.
You know, I got to say, I feel sorry for little girls that are growing up with a dad that is so emasculated that he can't actually stand up and say, yes, sweetheart, you should be able to have your own locker rooms, your own bathrooms, and your own sports. But that's where we're at. That's
3
the
years
state of
ago,
Democrat
Peyton McNabb
masculinity.
was an all-star high school athlete, one of the best, preparing for a future in college sports. But when her girls' volleyball match was invaded by a male, he smashed the ball so hard in Peyton's face, causing traumatic brain injury, partially paralyzing her right side, and ending her athletic career. It was a shot like she's never seen before. She's never seen anything like it. Peyton is here tonight in the gallery, and Peyton, from now on, schools will kick the men off the girls' team, or they will lose all federal funding.
Yes.
Good. Good. Thank you, Caleb. Great to see you, Moxley, man. Can't believe that's a controversial issue in America.
And if you really want to see numbers, just take a look at what happened in the women's boxing, weightlifting, track and field, swimming, or cycling, where a male recently finished a long-distance race 5 hours and 14 minutes ahead of a woman. Jeez. For a new record by 5 hours. Broke the record by 5 hours. It's demeaning for women, and it's very bad for our country. We're not going to put up with it any longer.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
And 70% of the country agrees with this,
Yeah.
but the Democrats are drawing a line in the sand, and they're standing on the side of 30%.
Oh yeah. Well, it's. I mean, they're standing on the side of absurdity. It's like we're just going to ignore reality because we find it politically inconvenient.
Described is only a small fraction of the common sense revolution that is now, because of us, sweeping the entire world. Common sense has become a common theme, and we will never go back. Never. Never going to let that happen.
Yeah.
Among my very highest priorities is to rescue our economy and get dramatic and immediate relief to working families. As you know, we inherited from the last administration an economic catastrophe and an inflation nightmare. Their policies drove up energy prices, pushed up grocery costs, and drove the necessities of life out of reach for millions and millions of Americans. They've never had anything like it. We suffered the worst inflation in 48 years, but perhaps even in the history of our country. They're not sure. As president, I'm fighting every day to reverse this damage and make America affordable again.
Yeah, it's amazing. We're dealing with this with in Virginia, especially on the clean energy. There's a reason why he focuses so much on energy policies because it has ripple effects throughout the entire economy.
Yeah.
In Virginia, your electric bill, your heating bill is about to go up
Joe Biden
significantly
especially let
because
the
of
price
green
eggs
policy.
get out of control. The egg price is out of control, and we're working hard to get it back down. Secretary, do a good job on that. You inherited a total mess from the previous administration.
He's
Do a
not
good
wrong.
job.
He's right. They
He's
were
not-
killing millions and millions and millions of birds
Because of bird flu.
over bird flu instead of keeping the ones that survived it and breeding them
A
so that
major
they'd be
focus
resistant.
of our fight to defeat inflation is rapidly reducing the cost of energy. The previous administration cut the number of new oil and gas leases by 95%, slowed pipeline construction to a halt, and closed more than 100 power plants. We are opening up many of those power plants right now.
You can't restrict supply and then expect prices not to be negatively impacted as a result. And that's what the Democrats have done with their energy policy.
We should have had our bingo
And
card for
frankly,
what
we
he
have
talks
never
about.
seen anything like it. That's why on my first day in office, I declared a national energy emergency.
He's about to say, drill, baby, drill. It's on my bingo
As
card.
you've
I'm
heard
ready.
me say many times, we have more liquid gold under our feet than any nation on earth, and by far. And now I fully authorize the most talented team ever assembled to go and get it. It's called Drill, Baby, Drill.
All right,
Drill,
you got it, honey.
baby, drill. I knew it. I knew it.
Oh, they're so upset that people might be able to afford to
My
heat their homes.
administration is also working on a gigantic natural gas pipeline in Alaska, among the largest in the world, where Japan, South Korea, and other nations want to be our partner with investments of trillions of dollars each. There's never been anything like that one. It will be truly spectacular. It's all set to go. The permitting is gotten. And later this week, I will also take historic action to dramatically expand production of critical minerals and rare earths here in the USA.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually have significant like cobalt and things like that in places
Lithium
like Idaho.
and-
Yeah.
To further combat inflation, we will not only be reducing the cost of energy, but we'll be ending the flagrant waste of taxpayer dollars.
I voted for all of this.
Yeah.
And to that end, I have created the brand new Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE.
There's Doug.
Yeah.
Perhaps you've heard of it.
There's
Perhaps.
Doge.
I'm going to have bingo by the time this is over.
Which is headed by Elon Musk, who is in the gallery tonight.
He's wearing a suit with a tie. I
Oh,
can't
wow.
believe it.
That's very
Well,
rare for
that's the
for
dress
Musk.
code, right?
Yeah,
In
yeah,
the
it is.
chamber.
That is the dress code in the chamber.
Look at him gazing across, looking for his
Thank
next
you,
baby
Elon.
mama.
He's working very hard. He didn't need this. He didn't need this. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Everybody here, even this side, appreciates it, I believe.
Probably not.
They
They
just don't
hate
want to
his
admit that. Just listen to some of the appalling waste
Here we
we have
go.
already identified.
Let's
$22
go.
billion from HHS to provide free housing and cars for illegal aliens. $45 million for diversity, equity, and inclusion scholarships in Burma.
The military
$40
junta.
million to improve the social and economic inclusion of sedentary migrants.
We talked
Nobody
about
knows what that is. $8 million to promote LGBTQI+ in the African nation of Lesotho, which nobody has ever heard of. $60 million for indigenous peoples and Afro-Colombian empowerment in Central America. $60 million. $8 million for making mice transgender.
Oh my gosh.
This is real.
Yeah.
$32 million for a left-wing propaganda operation in Moldova. $10 million for male circumcision in Mozambique. $20 million for the Arab Sesame Street in the Middle East. It's a program. $20 million for a program. $1.9 billion to recently created Decarbonization of Homes Committee, headed up, and we know she's involved. Just at the last moment, the money was passed over by a woman named Stacey Abrams. Have you
Oh,
ever
yeah.
heard
Yeah.
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 a
Wasn't she the real
$3.5
governor
million
of Georgia?
consulting contract for lavish fish monitoring, $1.5 million for voter confidence in Liberia, $14 million for social cohesion in Mali, $59 million for illegal alien hotel rooms in New York City.
Okay. I called that he would go through all this.
He's a real estate developer. He's done very well. $250,000 to increase vegan local climate action innovation in Zambia. $42 million for social and behavior change in Uganda. $14 million for improving public procurement in Serbia. $47 million for improving learning outcomes in Asia. Asia's doing very well with learning. I don't know what we're doing. We could use it ourselves. And $101 million for DEI contracts at the Department of Education, the most ever paid, nothing even like it. Under the Trump administration, all of these scams, and they're far worse, but I didn't think it was appropriate to talk about them. They're so bad. Many more have been found out and exposed and swiftly terminated by a group of very intelligent, mostly young people, headed up by Elon, and we appreciate it. We found hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud.
Yeah. No, it's nuts. I'm glad he called
Democrats
so
are
much
mad.
about
Democrats are
specific.
dead silent
Yes.
on this point.
It's their
Have you
money
noticed
laundering scheme.
Well, and this is the
They
part
they're
where,
not saying a
like,
word.
again, when people show up in the comments, they're like, "Oh, but we're in it." Do you see the amount of waste?
All of this
And
went
we've
into
taken
their
back the
coffers
money
for their
and
campaigns.
reduced our debt to fight inflation and other things.
Yeah.
Taking back a lot of that money. We got it just in time. This is just the beginning. The Government Accountability Office, a federal government office, has estimated annual fraud of over $500 billion in our
Jeez.
nation. And we are working very hard to stop it. We're going to.
To give you an idea,
We're also identifying shocking levels of incompetence and probable fraud in the Social Security program
Yeah.
for our seniors, and that our seniors and people that we love rely on. Believe it or not, government databases list 4.7 million Social Security members from people aged 100 to 109 years old.
jeez.
It lists 3.6 million people from ages 110 to 119. I don't know any of them. I know some people that are rather elderly, but not quite that elderly. 3.47 million people from ages 120 to 129. 3.9 million people from ages 130 to 139. 3.5 million people
He's looking right at
from
him now.
ages 140 to 149.
It's their voter base.
And money is being paid to many of them. And we're searching right now. In fact, Pam, good luck.
They're listed as alive, which
You're
means
gonna
they could
find
be
it.
voting.
Yeah.
A lot of money is paid out to people because it just keeps getting paid, and nobody does. And it really hurts Social Security and
Yeah.
hurts our country. 1.3 million people from ages 150 to 159, and over 130,000 people, according to the Social Security databases, are age over 160 years old.
Oh, jeez.
We have a healthier country than I thought, Bobby.
Leave it to him to crack a joke.
Well, and can we also say that this is the point? Democrats are sitting here furious about this. It's like, why do you not want this fraud recovered? So
We know
Social
why.
Security is not solvent
It's be-
because of stuff like this.
Including
It's because it's their
to
voter
finish,
base.
1,039 people between the ages of 220 and 229. One person between the age of 240 and 249. And one person is listed at 360 years of age. More than 100 years. More than 100 years older than our country. but we're going to find out where that money's going.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be pretty. By slashing all of the fraud, waste, and theft we can find, we will defeat inflation, bring down mortgage rates, lower car payments and grocery prices, protect our seniors, and put more money in the pockets of American families.
Yeah. You know, it's funny whenever we talk about the problems with programs like Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security, it's always, oh, you're mean, you're evil, you're bad. It's like, this is a sort of fraud, waste, and abuse that hurts Americans. It hurts Americans. It's not a bad thing to point out that this is happening.
Rates took a beautiful drop, big, beautiful drop. It's about time. And in the near future, I want to do what has not been done in 24 years, balance the federal budget. We're going to balance it.
That is going to be extremely difficult.
Yeah, because of entitlement spending.
Yeah.
Because of the big three.
Look at, there's like 3 Democrats that are clapping to that.
Yeah.
That are, of course, going to vote against anything to balance the budget.
They're in dangerous districts.
Yeah.
With that goal in mind, we have developed in great detail what we are calling the Gold Card, which goes on sale very, very soon. For $5 million, we will allow the most successful job-creating people from all over the world to buy a path to U.S. citizenship. It's like the green card, but better and more sophisticated.
Yeah, because we're getting the best and the brightest.
This is actually quite controversial within the right.
Yeah.
From where they came.
I'm fine with
The
it.
money that they've made, you wouldn't want to do that, but they have to pay tax, create jobs. They'll also be taking people out of colleges and paying for them so that we can keep them in our country instead of having them being forced out. Number one, at the top school, as an example, being forced out and not being allowed to stay and create tremendous numbers of jobs and great success for a company out there. So while we take out the criminals, killers, traffickers, and child predators who are allowed to enter our country under the open border policy of these people, the Democrats, the Biden administration, the open border insane policies that you've allowed to destroy our country, we will now bring in brilliant, hardworking, job-creating people. They're going to pay a lot of money, and we're going to reduce our debt with that money.
They're trying everything because they mean it. They want to get it down.
Americans have given us a mandate for bold and profound change. For nearly 100 years, the federal bureaucracy has grown until it has crushed our freedoms, ballooned our deficits, and held back America's potential in every possible way. The nation founded by pioneers and risk-takers now drowns under millions and millions of pages of regulations and debt. Approvals that should take 10 days to get instead take 10 years, 15 years, and even 20 years before you're rejected.
Oh, gosh, amen.
Meanwhile, we have hundreds of thousands of federal workers who have not been showing up to work. My administration will reclaim power from this unaccountable bureaucracy, and we will restore true democracy to America again.
Yeah.
I love when he points at the Democrats, when he talks about the regulations and the debt, he points to the Democrats.
Well, look, I'm sorry. We were never supposed to have this massive. The federal government is not a jobs program, right? It's only supposed to sustain jobs for legitimate functions of government.
Who resist this change will be removed from office immediately. Because we are draining the swamp. It's very simple. And the days of rule by unelected bureaucrats are over.
Yeah.
What did he say? Unelected
Bureaucrats.
And the next phase of our plan to deliver the greatest economy in history is for this Congress to pass tax cuts for everybody. They're in there. They're waiting for you to vote.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that the people on my right, I don't mean the Republican right, but my right here, I'm sure you're going to vote for those tax cuts, because otherwise I don't believe the people will ever vote you into office. So I'm doing you a big favor by telling you that.
Hey,
But I know this group is going to be voting for the tax.
never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. Come on.
So Black Sheep said, but what about Trump has raised the debt ceiling and has first spent money like it was going out of business?
It's a very,
Hey,
very big
we
part
called
of
that
our
out.
plan. We had tremendous success in our first term with it, a very big part of our plan. We're seeking permanent income tax cuts all across the board. And to get urgently needed relief to Americans hit especially hard by inflation, I'm calling for no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security benefits for our great seniors.
Yes.
Yeah.
I hope they get this done. Come on, Congress. And this is one of those things. They're like, oh, but we need to preserve our majority.
I'll tell you, you really want to make me happy. Just get rid of the 16th Amendment and can we get rid of the federal income
And I also want to make interest payments on car loans tax deductible, but only if the car is made in America.
I'll take it. Hey, I'll take any deduction I can get if you're not going to get rid of taxes altogether.
Yeah.
And by the way, we're going to have growth in the auto industry like nobody's ever seen. Plants are opening up all over the place. Deals are being made. Never seen. That's a combination of the election win and tariffs. It's a beautiful word, isn't it? That, along with our other policies, will allow our auto industry to absolutely boom. It's going to boom. Spoke to the majors today, all three, the top people, and they're so excited. In fact, already numerous car companies have announced that they will be building massive automobile plants in America, with Honda just announcing a new plant in Indiana, one of the largest anywhere in the world.
Okay, that was on my bingo card, remember?
Yeah.
And this has taken place since our great victory on November 5th, a date which will hopefully go down as one of the most important in the history of our country. In addition, as part of our tax cuts, we want to cut taxes on domestic production and all manufacturing. And just as we did before, we will provide 100% expensing. It will be retroactive to January 20th, 2025. And it was one of the main reasons why our tax cuts were so successful in our first term, giving us the most successful economy in the history of our country. First term. We had a great first term.
It's amazing. Democrats will talk about tax
If
cuts,
you
but then
don't
they
make
want to
your
give the money to
product
people
in
that don't pay
America,
taxes.
however, under the Trump administration, you will pay a tariff, and in some cases, a rather large one. Other countries have used tariffs against us for decades, and now it's our turn to start using them against those other countries. On average, the European Union, China, Brazil, India, Mexico, and Canada, have you heard of them? And countless other nations charge us tremendously higher tariffs than we charge them. It's very unfair. India charges us auto tariffs higher than 100%. China's average tariff on our products is twice what we charge them. And South Korea's average tariff is 4 times higher. Think of that, 4 times higher. And we give so much help militarily and in so many other ways to South Korea, but that's what happens. This is happening by friend and foe. This system is not fair to the United States and never was, and so on April 2nd, I wanted to make it April 1st, but I didn't want to be accused of April Fool's Day. That's not, just one day cost us a lot of money. But we're going to do it in April. I'm a very superstitious person. April 2nd, reciprocal tariffs kick in. And whatever they tariff us, other countries, we will tariff them. That's reciprocal, back and forth. Whatever they tax us, we will tax them.
So can I point something out here? This is Trump.
If they do non-monetary tariffs to keep us out of their market, then we will do non-monetary barriers to keep them out of our market. There's a lot of that, too. They don't even allow us in their market. We will take in trillions and trillions of dollars and create jobs like we have never seen before. I did it with China, and I did it with others, and the Biden administration couldn't do anything about it because there was so much money they couldn't do anything about it. We have been ripped off for decades by nearly every country on earth, and we will not let that happen any longer.
No, I want to point something out here. He's right here is admitting that he's using tariffs as a tool to get other people to remove their tariffs. I've said this all along. Trump understands that what we want is a better, fairer, freer trader environment.
3 months about Mexico and Canada, but we have very large deficits with both of them. But even more importantly, they've allowed fentanyl to come into our country at levels never seen before, killing hundreds of thousands of our citizens and many very young, beautiful people, destroying families. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. They are, in effect, receiving subsidies of hundreds of billions of dollars. We pay subsidies to Canada and to Mexico of hundreds of billions of dollars, and the United States will not be doing that any longer. We're not going to do it any longer. Thanks to our America First policies we're putting into place, we have had $1.7 trillion of new investment in America in just the past few weeks. The combination of the election and our economic policies that people of SoftBank, one of the most brilliant anywhere in the world, announced a $200 billion investment. OpenAI and Oracle, Larry Ellison, announced $500 billion investment, which they wouldn't have done if Kamala had won. Apple,
Here goes Apple.
$500 billion investment. Tim Cook called me. He said, I cannot spend it fast enough. It's going to be much higher than that, I believe. They'll be building their plants here instead of in China. And just yesterday, Taiwan Semiconductor, the biggest in the world, most powerful in the world, has a tremendous amount, 97% of the market, announced a $165 billion investment to build the most powerful chips on earth right here in the USA.
I think I got bingo. Do I have bingo?
I think you have bingo, honey.
I'm pretty sure I have bingo on this.
And we're not giving them any money. Your CHIPS Act is a horrible, horrible thing. We give hundreds of billions of dollars, and it doesn't mean a thing. They take our money and they don't spend it. All that meant to them, we're giving them no money. All that was important to them was they didn't want to pay the tariffs, so they came and they're building, and many other companies are coming. We don't have to give them money. We just want to protect our businesses and our people, and they will come because they won't have to pay tariffs if they build in America. So it's very amazing. You should get rid of the CHIP Act, and whatever's left over, Mr. Speaker, you should use it to reduce debt or any other reason you want to.
That was actually, I'm impressed by Trump bringing that up, because that was a case of extreme cronyism was the CHIPS Act.
A new trade policy will also be great for the American farmer. I love the farmer. Who will now be selling into our home market, the USA, because nobody is going to be able to compete with you. Because there's goods that come in from other countries and companies, they're really in a bad position in so many different ways. They're uninspected. They may be very dirty and disgusting, and they come in and they pour in, and they hurt our American farmers. The tariffs will go on agricultural product coming into America, and our farmers, starting on April 2nd, it may be a little bit of an adjustment period. We had that before when I made the deal with China, $50 billion of purchases, and I said, just bear with me, and they did. They did. Probably have to bear with me again, and this will be even better. That was great. The problem with it was that Biden didn't enforce it. He didn't enforce it. $50 billion of purchases, and we were doing great, but Biden did not enforce it, and it hurt our farmers. But our farmers are going to have a field day right now. So to our farmers.
No pun
Have
intended.
a lot of fun. I love you too. I love you too.
Yeah.
It's all going to happen.
Yeah, American agriculture would do a lot better if we could
And I
just get
have
government
also
regulations out of
imposed
the way.
a 25% tariff on foreign aluminum, copper, lumber, and steel because if we don't have, as an example, steel and lots of other things, we don't have a military and frankly we just won't have a country very long. Here today is a proud American steelworker, fantastic person from Decatur, Alabama, Jeff Denard. Has been working at the same steel plant for 27 years in a job that has allowed him to serve as the captain of his local volunteer fire department, raise 7 children with his beautiful wife, Nicole, and over the years provide a loving home for more than 40 foster children. So great, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, the comment sections talk a lot about property taxes. Those are almost always assessed locally, so that's usually a state and local thing. It's not
Stories
really
like
a
Jeff's
federal thing.
remind us that tariffs are not just about protecting American jobs. They're about protecting the soul of our country. Tariffs are about making America rich again and making America great again, and it's happening, and it will happen rather quickly. There'll be a little disturbance, but we're okay with that. It won't be much. No, you're not. Oh. And look where Biden took us. Very low, the lowest we've ever been. Jeff, I want to thank you very much. And I also want to recognize another person who has devoted herself to foster care community. She works so hard on it. A very loving person, our magnificent First Lady of the United States.
He's checking his watch, make sure he's on time. So far, I've understood every word he said.
Melania's work
No
has
word
yielded
salads.
incredible results, helping prepare our nation's future leaders as they enter the workforce. Our First Lady is joined by 2 impressive young women, very impressive. Haley Ferguson, who benefited from the First Lady's Fostering the Future initiative and is poised to complete her education and become a teacher. And Elliston Berry, who became a victim of an illicit deepfake image produced by a peer. With Elliston's help, the Senate just passed the Take It Down Act, and this is so important. Thank you very much, John. John Thune, thank you.
I tried
Stand
to
up,
carry
John.
legislation in Virginia on
Thank you,
AI-generated images like that, where basically it was like you couldn't make an AI-generated image of somebody and then
Thank
distribute
you all
it.
very much.
And died in a subcommittee.
Thank you. And thank you to John Thune and the Senate. Great job. To criminalize the publication of such images online is terrible, terrible thing. And once it passes the House, I look forward to signing that bill into law. Thank you. And I'm going to use that bill for myself, too, if you don't mind. Because nobody gets treated worse than I do online. Nobody. That's great. Thank you very much to the Senate. Thank you. But if we truly care about protecting Americans' children, no step is more crucial than securing America's borders. Over the past 4 years, 21 million people poured into the United States. Many of them were murderers, human traffickers, gang members, and other criminals from the streets of dangerous cities all throughout the world.
He pointed at the
Because of
Democrats
Joe
again.
Biden's insane and very dangerous open border policies. They are now strongly embedded in our country, but we are getting them out and getting them out fast.
I love that he keeps pointing at the Democrats anytime it's something their policies promoted that's, bad for the country.
And I want to thank Tom Homan and Christy. I want to thank you and Paul of Border Patrol. I want to thank you. What a job they've all done, everybody. Border Patrol, ICE. Well, law enforcement in general is incredible. We have to take care of our law enforcement. Have to.
Yeah, Tom's under like constant death threats.
Yeah.
We've had to work on
Last
getting him
year-
security in Virginia because of it. Tom Homan.
A brilliant 22-year-old nursing student named Laken Riley, the best in her class, admired by everybody, went out for a jog on the campus of the University of Georgia. That morning, Laken was viciously attacked, assaulted, beaten, brutalized, and horrifically murdered. Laken was stolen from us by a savage illegal alien gang member who was arrested while trespassing across Biden's open southern border and then set loose into the United States under the heartless policies of that failed administration. It was indeed a failed administration. He had then been arrested and released in a Democrat-run sanctuary city, a disaster, before ending the life of this beautiful young angel. With us this evening are Laken's beloved mother, Allison, and her sister, Lauren. Last year, I told Laken's grieving parents that we would ensure their daughter would not have died in vain. That's why the very first bill I signed into law as your 47th president mandates the detention of all dangerous criminal aliens who threaten public safety. It's a very strong, powerful act.
That was a bill we had too in Virginia this year. We were going to require once an illegal alien had been convicted of a crime, and it was a violent crime. It wasn't even just like,
It's
jaywalking.
called the Laken-Riley
They had to be
Act.
deported. They had to be handed over to
Allison
ICE.
and Lauren, America will never, ever forget our beautiful Laken Hope Riley.
Someone in the chat says it's an unjust law, Laken Riley Act, government overreach.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Since when do Democrats care about government overreach?
Yeah,
They
right.
don't.
Thank you very much. Since taking office, my administration has launched the most sweeping border and immigration crackdown in American history, and we quickly achieved the lowest numbers of illegal border crossers ever recorded. Thank you. The media and our friends in the Democrat Party kept saying we needed new legislation. We must have legislation to secure the border. But it turned out that all we really needed was a new president.
Yep.
No, definitely true. Democrats kept screaming that they needed a new bill.
Yeah.
The president came in without a new bill and did all of those things. With the existing authorities and funding that the federal government already had, it was an absolute lie by the Democrats. It was
Everything
absolute
they
lie.
did was a lie.
Well, no,
Everything's
look,
a lie.
I'm not talking about hyperbole here. I'm saying the Democrats specifically lied about this idea that they
Yeah.
needed this bill in order to do something,
Joe
and they
Biden
didn't.
didn't just open our borders, he flew illegal aliens over them to overwhelm our schools, hospitals, and communities throughout the country. Entire towns like Aurora, Colorado, and Springfield, Ohio, buckled under the weight of the migrant occupation and corruption like nobody's ever seen before. Beautiful towns destroyed. Now, just as I promised in my inaugural address, we are achieving the great liberation of America.
Hopefully Europe follows suit.
But there still is much work to be done. Here tonight is a woman I have gotten to know, Alexis Nungari from Houston. Wonderful woman. Last June, Alexis's 12-year-old daughter, her precious Jocelyn, walked to a nearby convenience store. She was kidnapped, tied up, assaulted for 2 hours under a bridge, and horrifically murdered. Arrested and charged with this heinous crime are 2 illegal alien monsters from Venezuela, released into America by the last administration through their ridiculous open border. The death of this beautiful 12-year-old girl and the agony of her mother and family touched our entire nation greatly. Alexis, I promised that we would always remember your daughter, your magnificent daughter, and earlier tonight I signed an order keeping my word to you. One thing I have learned about Jocelyn is that she loved animals so much. She loved nature. Across Galveston Bay, from where Jocelyn lived in Houston, you will find a magnificent national wildlife refuge, a pristine, peaceful, 34,000-acre sanctuary for all of God's creatures on the edge of the Gulf of America. Alexis, moments ago, I formally renamed that refuge in loving memory of your beautiful daughter, Jocelyn. So, Mr. Vice President, if you would, may I have the order?
Ooh. Nice showing it to them.
Thank you very much. All 3 savages charged with Jocelyn and Lakin's murders were members of the Venezuelan prison gang, the toughest gang, they say, in the world, known as Tren de Aragua. 2 weeks ago, I officially designated this gang, along with MS-13 and the bloodthirsty Mexican drug cartels, as foreign terrorist organizations.
Yep. Accurate depiction.
Yeah.
Accurate
It's about
depiction.
time. I can't believe we didn't do that sooner.
I remember my dad telling me about MS-13 when it was first coming into Los Angeles. And, I mean, just absolutely brutal. Absolutely brutal.
They are now officially in the same category as ISIS, and that's not good for them. Countless thousands of these terrorists were welcomed into the U.S. by the Biden administration. But now every last one will be rounded up and forcibly removed from our country, or, if they're too dangerous, put in jails, standing trial in this country, because we don't want them to come back ever. With us this evening is a warrior on the front lines of that battle, Border Patrol Agent Roberto Ortiz. Great guy.
Dude, working Border Patrol, we went down there back in 2020, and it was nuts. As we were sitting there on the border with somebody like escorting us and showing us like a school on the border, literally 2 people crossed over and were like going into the country, and then Border Patrol stopped them. I mean, it's just nuts.
In January, Roberto and another agent were patrolling by the Rio Grande, near an area known as Cartel Island. Doesn't sound too nice to me. When heavily armed gunmen started shooting at them, Roberto saw that his partner was totally exposed, at great danger, and he leapt into action, returning fire and providing crucial seconds for his fellow agent to seek safety, just barely. I have some of the prints of that event, and it was not good. Agent Ortiz, we salute you for your great courage and for your line of fire that you took, and for the bravery that you showed. We honor you, and we will always honor you. Thank you, Roberto, very much.
Now, that is a dangerous job, especially when you start interdicting like tunnels doing drug movements and human trafficking, because the cartel is running all of that.
Thank you, Roberto. And I actually got to know him on my many calls to the border. He's a great gentleman. The territory to the immediate south of our border is now dominated entirely by criminal cartels that murder, rape, torture, and exercise total control. They have total control over a whole nation, posing a grave threat to our national security. The cartels are waging war in America, and it's time for America to wage war on the cartels, which we are doing. Five nights ago, Mexican authorities, because of our tariff policies being imposed on them, think of this, handed over to us 29 of the biggest cartel leaders in their country. That has never happened before. They want to make us happy. First time ever. But we need Mexico and Canada to do much more than they've done, and they have to stop the fentanyl and drugs pouring into the USA. They're going to stop it. I have sent Congress a detailed funding request laying out exactly how we will eliminate these threats to protect our homeland and complete the largest deportation operation in American history, larger even than current record holder, President Dwight D. Eisenhower, a moderate man, but someone who believed very strongly in borders. Americans expect Congress to send me this funding without delay so I can sign it into law. So, Mr. Speaker, John Thune, both of you, I hope you're going to be able to do that, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Mr. Leader, thank you. Thank you very much. And let's get it to me. I'll sign it so fast, you won't even believe it. And as we reclaim our sovereignty, we must also bring back law and order to our cities and towns.
Yeah, that's definitely
in
about
recent
them.
years, our justice system has been turned upside down by radical left lunatics.
Oh, damn,
Many
he pointed that
jurisdictions
out.
virtually ceased enforcing the law against dangerous repeat offenders while weaponizing law enforcement against political opponents like me. My administration has acted swiftly and decisively to restore fair, equal, and impartial justice under the constitutional rule of law, starting at the FBI and the DOJ. Pam, good luck. Cash, wherever you may be, good luck. Good luck. Pam Bond, good luck. So important. Going to do a great job.
No, it's incredible.
Cash, thank you.
There's like several articles from Minneapolis
Thank you,
where
Cash.
it starts with them defunding the police and then a crime surge and then the city council wondering why the police aren't doing anything and then going back and recognizing because they don't have enough police and so refunding the police. It's like, oh yeah,
They've
wow.
already
Who could have
started very
predicted
strong.
that?
They're going to do a fantastic job. You're going to be very proud of them. We're also once again giving our police officers the support, protection, and respect they so dearly deserve. They have to get it. They have such a hard, dangerous job, but we're going to make it less dangerous. The problem is the bad guys don't respect the law, but they're starting to respect it, and they soon will respect it. This also includes our great fire departments throughout the country. Our firemen and women are unbelievable people, and we'll never forget them. And besides that, they voted for me in record numbers, so I have no choice. One year ago this month, 31-year-old New York police officer Jonathan Diller, unbelievably wonderful person and a great officer, was gunned down at a traffic stop on Long Island. I went to his funeral. The vicious criminal charged with his murder had 21 prior arrests, and they were rough arrests, too. He was a real bad one. The thug in the seat next to him had 14 prior arrests and went by the name of Killer. He was Killer. He killed other people, they say, a lot of them. I attended Officer Diller's service, and when I met his wife and one-year-old son, Ryan. It was very inspirational, actually. His widow's name is Stephanie, and she is here tonight. Stephanie, thank you very much, Stephanie. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we had a horrible bill in Virginia with early sentence credits, and it's led to multiple people being let out of jail early who then reoffended and were put back, and not just for like drug possession, like first-degree murder, second-degree murder, rape, crimes against children. And we had a bill to try to address it, never got heard. Probably because it was the Speaker's bill originally that passed.
And we're going to get these cold-blooded killers and repeat offenders off our streets, and we're going to do it fast. Got to stop it. They get out with 28 arrests. They push people into subway trains. They hit people over the head, back of the head with baseball bats. We got to get them out of here. I've already signed an executive order requiring a mandatory death penalty for anyone who murders a police officer. And tonight I'm asking Congress to pass that policy into permanent law. I'm also asking for a new crime bill getting tough on repeat offenders while enhancing protections for America's police officers so they can do their jobs without fear of their lives being totally destroyed. They don't want to be killed. We're not going to let them be killed. Joining us in the gallery tonight is a young man who truly loves our police. His name is DJ Daniel. He is 13 years old, and he has always dreamed of becoming a police officer.
Look at that. The other day, Luke called us from basic training. We got to FaceTime with him. It was the first time I saw him in uniform with his Freitas name tag. And like, I didn't cry because I'm a tough guy, but yeah, it was pretty moving to see my son in his Army uniform.
But in 2018, DJ was diagnosed with brain cancer. The doctors gave him 5 months at most to live. That was more than 6 years ago.
Wow.
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 Since that time, DJ and his dad have been on a quest to make his dream come true, and DJ has been sworn in as an honorary law enforcement officer, actually a number of times. The police love him, the police departments love him. And tonight, DJ, we're going to do you the biggest honor of them all. I am asking our new Secret Service Director, Sean Curran, to officially make you an agent of the United States Secret Service.
Oh, that's cool, man. I love stuff like this. Yeah. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Oh, look at that. Oh, he's hugging the director of the Secret Service. That's the sort of stuff where, look, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on or whatnot. Like, that's cool.
Thank you, DJ.
Of course, that is a dangerous
DJ's
job with
doctors
President
believe
Trump.
His cancer likely came from a chemical he was exposed to when he was younger. Since 1975, rates of child cancer have increased by more than 40%.
Jeez.
Reversing this trend is one of the top priorities for our new presidential commission to make America healthy again, chaired by our new Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Yeah. Do you remember when Joe Biden came into office and said they were going to cure cancer in his administration? I'm glad. Look, I disagree with RFK Jr. on a lot of things. I actually had the opportunity to meet him, was it last week? And really impressed with him. Really impressed with him. He sat there, asked questions, and I think he brings up a lot of important things that have been ignored when it comes to not only
With
cancer,
the name
but
Kennedy,
a number
you
of
would
other
have thought
things.
everybody over here would have been cheering. How quickly they forget. Our goal is to get toxins out of our environment, poisons out of our food supply, and keep our children healthy and strong. As an example, not long ago, and you can't even believe these numbers, 1 in 10,000 children had autism, 1 in 10,000, and now it's 1 in 36. There's something wrong, 1 in 36, think of that. So we're going to find out what it is, and there's nobody better than Bobby and all of the people that are working with you. You have the best to figure out what is going on. Okay, Bobby, good luck. It's a very important job. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I'm really excited about this. Again, this is one of the things I've loved the most about his cabinet picks is he's picked people that are skeptical of the way that it's always been done.
Yeah.
As opposed to just bringing up within the organization and running it and maintaining the status quo.
My administration is also working to protect our children from toxic ideologies in our schools. A few years ago, January, Little John and her husband discovered that their daughter's school had secretly socially transitioned their 13-year-old little girl. Teachers and administrators conspired to deceive January and her husband while encouraging her daughter to use a new name and pronouns.
They've done this in Virginia, too.
They, them pronoun, actually. All without telling January, who is here tonight and is now a courageous advocate against this form of child abuse. January, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We had a bill like that in Virginia too. We call it Sage's Law because we had a girl that not only got transitioned by the school, socially transitioned, but then trafficked. They hid it from the parent, and so we had a bill to try to deal with this. Again, guess what happened? Democrats didn't even give it a hearing. Wouldn't even let the mother testify.
Why, shortly after taking
Grandmother.
office, I signed an executive order banning public schools from indoctrinating our children with transgender ideology.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that Democrats think we have all kinds of time for this other garbage in schools when our reading and our math scores are in the
I also
toilet.
signed an order to cut off all taxpayer funding to any institution that engages in the sexual mutilation of our youth.
Yep. You hear that, UVA? Watching.
And now I want Congress to pass a bill permanently banning and criminalizing sex changes on children and forever ending the lie that any child is trapped in the wrong body. This is a big lie.
Yeah. We actually got a Democrat to admit twice on the floor she didn't realize why we kept asking the question.
And
that
our message
a child could not
to
consent
every
to sterilization.
child in America is that you are perfect exactly the way God made you.
Yeah.
The ultimate body positivity.
Yep.
Because we're getting wokeness out of our schools and out of our military, and it's already out, and it's out of our society. We don't want it. Wokeness is trouble. Wokeness is bad. It's gone. It's gone. And we feel so much better for it, don't we? Don't we feel better? Our service members won't be activists and ideologues. They will be fighters and warriors. They will fight for our country. And Pete, congratulations. Secretary of Defense, congratulations.
That's right. I feel so much better sending my son to the Army under this president.
And he's not big into the woke movement, I can tell you. I know him well.
Yeah, go
I'm
watch
pleased
Pete
to
Hex's
report
interview
that
with
in
Sean
January,
Ryan.
The U.S. Army had its single best recruiting month in 15 years, and that all armed services are having among the best recruiting results ever in the history of our services. What a difference. And you know, it was just a few months ago where the results were exactly the opposite. We couldn't recruit anywhere. We couldn't recruit. Now we're having the best results just about that we've ever had. What a tremendous turnaround. It's really a beautiful thing to see. People love our country again. It's very simple. They love our country, and they love being in our military again. So it's a great thing, and thank you very much. Great job. Thank you. We're joined tonight by a young man, Jason Hartley, who knows the weight of that call of duty. Jason's father, grandfather, and great-grandfather all wore the uniform. Jason tragically lost his dad, who was also a Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputy when he was just a boy, and now he wants to carry on the family legacy of service. Jason is a senior in high school, a 6-letter varsity athlete, a really good athlete, they say.
Dang.
A brilliant student with a 4.46, that's good, GPA. And his greatest dream is to attend the U.S. Military Academy at West Point.
Dang, man.
It's guys like him that got Trump elected, if you think about the polling and the shifts with younger voters.
Yep.
And Jason, that's a very big deal getting in. That's a hard one to get into. But I'm pleased to inform you that your application has been accepted. You will soon be joining the Forum today.
Dang. I always say my military career started by getting rejected by West Point. My math scores were like way too low.
Thank you. Jason, you're going to be on the long gray line, Jason. As Commander-in-Chief, my focus is on building the most powerful military of the future. As a first step, I'm asking Congress to fund a state-of-the-art Golden Dome missile defense shield to protect our homeland, all made in the USA. And Ronald Reagan wanted to do it long ago, but the technology just wasn't there, not even close. But now we have the technology. It's incredible, actually. And other places, they have it. Israel has it. Other places have it. And the United States should have it too, right, Tim, right? They should have it too. So I want to thank you. But it's a very, very important. This is a very dangerous world. We should have it. We want to be protected, and we're going to protect our citizens like never before. To boost our defense industrial base, we are also going to resurrect the American shipbuilding industry, including commercial shipbuilding and military shipbuilding.
Please tell me he's going to repeal the Jones Act.
That would be epic.
And for that purpose, I am announcing tonight that we will create a new Office of Shipbuilding in the White House and offer special tax incentives to bring this industry home to America where it belongs. We used to make so many ships. We don't make them anymore very much, but we're going to make them very fast, very soon. It will have a huge impact. To further enhance our national security, my administration will be reclaiming the Panama Canal, and we've already started doing it.
All right, we're reclaiming the Panama Canal. Let's go.
Just today, a large American company announced they are buying both ports around the Panama Canal and lots of other things having to do with the Panama Canal and a couple of other canals. The Panama Canal was built by Americans for Americans, not for others, but others could use it. But it was built at tremendous cost of American blood and treasure. 38,000 workers died building the Panama Canal. They died of malaria. They died of snake bites and mosquitoes. Not a nice place to work. They paid them very highly to go there, knowing there was a 25% chance that they would die. The most expensive project also that was ever built in our country's history, if you bring it up to modern day costs. It was given away by the Carter administration for $1, but that agreement has been violated very severely. We didn't give it to China. We gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back.
Yeah, understand that even when Carter gave it away, which was a ridiculous move, even when he gave it away, there were certain conditions placed on the
And we have
maintenance and
Marco
operation of it that
Rubio
I think have been
in
violated.
charge. Good luck, Marco.
Good luck,
Now-
Marco.
We know who to blame if anything goes wrong.
Oh, no.
Marco's been amazing, and he's going to do a great job. Think of it. He got 100 votes. You know, he was approved with actually 99, but the 100th was this gentleman, and I feel very certain. So let's assume he got 100 votes. I'm either very, very happy about that, or I'm very concerned about it. But he's already proven. I mean, he's a great gentleman. He's respected by everybody, and we appreciate you voting for Marco. He's going to do a fantastic job. Thank you. Thank you. He's doing a great job. Great job. And I also have a message tonight for the incredible people of Greenland. We strongly support your right to determine your own future. And if you choose, we welcome you into the United States of America. We need Greenland for national security and even international security, and we're working with everybody involved to try and get it. But we need it really for international world security.
Yeah, the Arctic.
And I think we're going to get it. One way or the other, we're going to get it. We will keep you safe. We will make you rich, and together we will take Greenland to heights like you have never thought possible before. It's a very small population,
About
but very,
56,000
very
people.
large piece of land, and very, very important for military security. America is once again standing strong against the forces of radical Islamic terrorism. 3.5 years ago, ISIS terrorists killed 13 American service members and countless others in the Abbey Gate bombing during the disastrous and incompetent withdrawal from Afghanistan. Not that they were withdrawing, it was the way they withdrew. Perhaps the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. Tonight, I am pleased to announce that we have just apprehended the top terrorist responsible for that atrocity, and he is right now on his way here to face the swift sword of American justice.
Nice.
There are a few Democrats clapping. I think they have to.
Apparently, several Democrats have walked out of the chamber.
Bye. You know what would be great? Protest even
And I
more and
want to
don't
thank
show up for the rest
especially
of the year.
government of Pakistan for helping arrest this monster. This was a very momentous day for those 13 families who I actually got to know very well, most of them, whose children were murdered, and the many people that were so badly, over 42 people, so badly injured on that fateful day in Afghanistan. What a horrible day. Such incompetence was shown that when Putin saw what happened, I guess he said, wow, maybe this is my chance. That's how bad it was. Should have never happened. Grossly incompetent people. I spoke to many of the parents and loved ones, and they're all in our hearts tonight. Just spoke to them on the phone. We had a big call. Every one of them called, and everybody was on the line, and they did nothing but cry with happiness. They were very happy, as happy as you can be under those circumstances. Their child, brother, sister, son, daughter was killed for no reason whatsoever. In the Middle East, we're bringing back our hostages from Gaza. In my first term, we achieved one of the most groundbreaking peace agreements
Abrahamic Accords.
in generations, the Abraham Accords.
That was significant. I mean, that was incredible. You were getting recognition for Israel from Arabic countries that I didn't think I would see it in my lifetime.
And now we're going to build on that foundation to create a more peaceful and prosperous future for the entire region. A lot of things are happening in the Middle East. People have been talking about that so much lately with everything going on with Ukraine and Russia. But a lot of things are happening in the Middle East. It's a rough neighborhood, actually. I'm also working tirelessly to end the savage conflict in Ukraine. Millions of Ukrainians and Russians have been needlessly killed or wounded in this horrific and brutal conflict with no end in sight. The United States has sent hundreds of billions of dollars to support Ukraine's defense with no security, with no anything. Do you want to keep it going for another 5 years? Yeah, you would say Pocahontas says yes.
Oh, dang! Oh, dang! So technically that could be considered a violation of house rules.
2,000 people are being killed every single week. More than that. They're Russian young people. They're Ukrainian young people. They're not Americans. But I want it to stop. Meanwhile, Europe has sadly spent more money buying Russian oil and gas.
Yep, we talked
than
about
they have
this.
spent on defending Ukraine.
Yeah,
by far.
You pointed this out earlier
They've
today.
spent more buying Russian oil and gas than they have defending, and we've spent perhaps $350 billion, like taking candy from a baby. That's what happened, and they've spent $100 billion. What a difference that is. And we have an ocean separating us, and they don't. But we're getting along very well with them, and lots of good things are happening. Biden has authorized more money in this fight than Europe has spent by billions and billions of dollars. It's hard to believe that they wouldn't have stopped it and said at some point, come on, let's equalize. You got to be equal to us. But that didn't happen. Earlier today, I received an important letter from President Zelensky of Ukraine. The letter reads, Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. Nobody wants peace more than the Ukrainians, he said. My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts. We do really value how much America has done to help Ukraine maintain its sovereignty and independence. Regarding the agreement on minerals and security, Ukraine is ready to sign it at any time that is convenient for you. I appreciate that he sent this letter, just got it a little while ago. Simultaneously, we've had serious discussions with Russia and have received strong signals that they are ready for peace. Wouldn't that be beautiful?
Yeah, it would.
Wouldn't that be beautiful?
I think one of the other things people need to understand here is that obviously there's questions about territorial integrity of Ukraine. There's questions about Russia and its future objectives within Europe, but
Wouldn't
it's
that
also
be
about
beautiful?
driving a wedge between Russia and China. And Trump is in a unique position to be able to affect both of
It's
those
time
things.
to
Stop the
stop
war in
this
Ukraine.
madness. It's time to halt the killing. It's time to end the senseless war. If you want to end wars, you have to talk to both sides. Nearly 4 years ago, amid rising tensions, a history teacher named Mark Fogel was detained in Russia and sentenced to 14 years in a penal colony. Rough stuff. The previous administration barely lifted a finger to help him. They knew he was innocent, but they had no idea where to begin. But last summer, I promised his 95-year-old mother, Malphine, that we would bring her boy safely back home. After 22 days in office, I did just that, and they are here tonight.
Democrats are leaving the chamber in droves right
Yeah.
now, by the way.
Well, what else can they do?
To Mark and his great mom, we are delighted to have you safe and sound and with us. As fate would have it, Mark Fogel was born in a small rural town in Butler, Pennsylvania. Have you heard of it?
Wow, really?
Where his mother has lived for the past 78 years. I just happened to go there last July 13th for a rally. That was not pleasant. And that is where I met his beautiful mom right before I walked onto that stage. And I told her I would not forget what she said about her son. And I never did I? Never forgot. Less than 10 minutes later, at that same rally, gunfire rang out, and a sick and deranged assassin unloaded 8 bullets from his sniper's perch into a crowd of many thousands of people. My life was saved by a fraction of an inch, but some were not so lucky. Corey Comparator was a firefighter, a veteran, a Christian, a husband, a devoted father, and above all, a protector. When the sound of gunshots pierced the air, it was a horrible sound. Corey knew instantly what it was and what to do. He threw himself on top of his wife and daughters and shielded them from the bullets with his own body. Corey was hit really hard. You know the story from there. He sacrificed his life to save theirs. 2 others, very fine people, were also seriously hit. But thankfully, with the help of 2 great country doctors, we thought they were gone and they were saved. So those doctors had great talent. We're joined by Corey's wife, Helen, who was his high school sweetheart, and their 2 beloved daughters, Allison and Kaylee. Thank you. To Helen, Allison, and Kaylee, Corey is looking down on his 3 beautiful ladies right now, and he is cheering you on. He loves you. He is cheering you on. Corey was taken from us much too soon, but his destiny was to leave us all with a shining example of the selfless devotion of a true American patriot. It was love like Corey's that built our country, and it's love like Corey's that is going to make our country more majestic than ever before. I believe that my life was saved that day in Butler for a very good reason. I was saved by God to make America great again. I believe that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. From the patriots of Lexington and Concord to the heroes of Gettysburg and Normandy, from the warriors who crossed the Delaware to the trailblazers who climbed the Rockies, and from the legends who soared at Kitty Hawk to the astronauts who touched the moon, Americans have always been the people who defied all odds, transcended all dangers, made the most extraordinary sacrifices, and did whatever it took to defend our children, our country, and our freedom. And as we have seen in this chamber tonight, that same strength, faith, love, and spirit is still alive and thriving in the hearts of the American people. Despite the best efforts of those who would try to censor us, silence us, break us, destroy us, Americans are today a proud, free, sovereign, and independent nation that will always be free, and we will fight for it till death. We will never let anything happen to our beloved country, because we are a country of doers, dreamers, fighters, and survivors. Our ancestors crossed a vast ocean, strode into the unknown wilderness, and carved their fortunes from the rock and soil of a perilous and very dangerous frontier. They chased our destiny across a boundless continent. They built the railroads, laid the highways, and graced the world with American marvels like the Empire State Building, the mighty Hoover Dam, and the towering Golden Gate Bridge. They lit the world with electricity, broke free of the force of gravity, fired up the engines of American industry, vanquished the communists, fascists, and Marxists all over the world, and gave us countless modern wonders sculptured out of iron, glass, and steel. We stand on the shoulders of these pioneers who won and built the modern age. These workers who poured their sweat into the skylines of our cities. These warriors who shed their blood on fields of battle and gave everything they had for our rights and for our freedom. Now it is our time to take up the righteous cause of American liberty. And it is our turn to take America's destiny into our own hands and begin the most thrilling days in the history of our country. This will be our greatest era. With God's help, over the next 4 years, we are going to lead this nation even higher, and we are going to forge the freest, most advanced, most dynamic, and most dominant civilization ever to exist on the face of this earth. We are going to create the highest quality of life, build the safest and wealthiest and healthiest and most vital communities anywhere in the world. We are going to conquer the vast frontiers of science, and we are going to lead humanity into space and plant the American flag on the planet Mars and even far beyond.
I think that was Elon going, yeah.
They've got to pan over to Elon at this point.
Yeah.
And through it all, we are going to rediscover the unstoppable power of the American spirit. And we are going to renew unlimited promise of the American dream. Every single day, we will stand up and we will fight, fight, fight for the country our citizens believe in and for the country our people deserve.
Oh, there's Mike. I knew Waltz before either of us were in politics.
My fellow Americans, get ready for an incredible future, because the golden age of America has only just begun. It will be like nothing that has ever been seen before. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
All
Oh,
right.
man. I
we
got to
go.
tell you.
This was his greatest speech I think he's ever given. I'm going to be totally honest.
I'm
How
trying to
many
think.
of his speeches have you actually listened to start to
Plenty.
finish? Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, but you think about this too. This was, I mean, he spoke for almost 2 hours. And you know that wasn't, I mean,
there were no, come on, man.
Look at how
Yeah.
empty
You
the
know?
Democratic side
Yeah.
of the chamber is.
well, look, you know, people talk about Trump having lofty goals and whatnot. The thing is that the one thing that I think you should be able to consistently say about Trump, because there's been times where he's been on kind of different ends of the political spectrum, but he has always been incredibly enthusiastic about America, its potential, that it is a special place. You see people like Joe Biden, you see people like Barack Obama, and they downplay this concept of American exceptionalism, right? America said, well, I believe in American exceptionalism the way I'm sure other people believe in their exceptionalism. Trump doesn't do that. Trump is unapologetically proud of the United States of America. I remember, it's funny, my chief of staff, Gina Stauffenberg, we were at an event, and I'm trying to remember who all was there. It was myself, Cliff Maloney, Ron Paul was actually speaking at the event. I think Rand might have been there. Thomas Massey, who there was I'm totally losing his name right now. He's done a lot of work with Shapiro and whatnot. This is
Michael Knowles?
No.
Oh.
He wasn't a part of the Daily Wire. He had his own show. Rubin.
Oh,
Dave
Rubin.
Dave Rubin. And so we're all sitting there, we're all talking about Trump, and Gina was there, and Dave looks over at Gina and says, hey, we've all been talking a lot. What do you think? And Gina said, regardless of anything else, I never doubt that Trump absolutely loves this country. Yeah. I can't say that about a lot of my Democrat colleagues, and people will say, well, that's hyperbolic or that's rude or that's divisive or what. No, I mean
not.
it.
They
I
hate
mean
our
it.
country.
When I think about when I think about what we kind of consider about the characteristics of the United States, when we talk about kind of the ideals expressed within the Declaration of Independence, I have a lot of pride in those things, not like in the negative sense, right? But I look at those as, no, these are worthwhile ideals. And I recognize that we haven't always lived up to them, but they're worthwhile ideals, and it's something worth fighting for. And whenever you talk about that with a Democrat, they almost instinctively have to say, oh, well, what about this? And what about this? Okay, we say that, but what about slavery? And what about Jim Crow? And it's like, look, I just said, I recognize we haven't always lived up to it. Sometimes we've fallen far, far short of it. But those ideals are something to be proud of. And for every what about the bad thing America did, I can give you 5 what about the great things we did.
I mean,
and Trump, again,
I stand by what I said a minute ago. Like, these people hate our country. It's not even just that they hate our country. They hate us.
Yeah.
They hate us. I grew up in an environment where going through high school, going through college, going through being a young adult, entering the workforce for the first time.
Yeah.
It was always, you're a bad guy because you're a white male.
Yeah.
Because you're a straight white male. Because you're a straight white Christian male.
Yeah.
Like, America's irredeemably racist. Then get the hell out of my country.
Yeah.
I just like, I mean, I had a bit of a brief dust up with somebody on the left who's active in politics on Twitter recently. I have a few people that I engage with. Mostly they're on the right? But like during the election cycle, I got to know a couple people on the left that are
you guys are all doing predictive analysis and data
and I posted this quote that I actually told you about earlier today before we were recording, an exchange between Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, where they talked about like their ideal leaders and stuff like that. So I posted this quote, and long story short, Jefferson had like his list of people, and it was like Newton, Locke, and Bacon, that he thought were like the 3 greatest men that ever existed. And he's writing about Hamilton, and Hamilton paused for a minute, and he was like, the greatest man who ever lived was Julius Caesar, which really illustrates the difference between the two of them. But I was having a conversation with some people about this, and somebody on the left replied to me and was like, yeah, this really illustrates that Jefferson was high IQ and Hamilton, really embodies like Trump nowadays, this, authoritarian impulse. And then I replied and I'm like, well, actually, if I recall correctly, it was you guys that were telling us that Thomas Jefferson was irredeemably racist and evil and bigoted, and that we need to tear down any monuments and statues to him because this country was founded on evil white slave owners. And here you are telling me that actually Jefferson's a good guy. No, what it is in that moment, he serves a useful purpose for you. And so you're going to defend him in that moment in the context of debating Alexander Hamilton. But 99% of the time, no, he's an evil white slave owning racist, and we need to erase him from history. Like at the end of the day, I've just gotten to a point where I no longer care what these people have to say about anything.
Tina, real quick, Tina and I have talked about this where it used to be, and somebody was saying, somebody said in the chat earlier that one of the frustrations that she had with this, she loved what Trump was doing and whatnot, but she wished that he could be more unifying. And all I can say is this.
I don't.
Well, no, okay, I know you don't, but let's just say for argument's sake, it would be nice to be able to be more unified. Okay, great. The problem is that I didn't choose the ideology that the Democratic Party has adopted as their governing ideology and philosophy. I didn't choose that for them. They chose it. They chose critical theory. They chose to essentially make all of U.S. history the worst aspects of any of our experiences or actions, while at the same time negating so much of the good that was done. They chose that. They're the ones that chose this political ideology, which essentially rejects so many of the concepts of America's founding, right? So they chose that. We're now at a point where many Democrats, not all, not your Democrat neighbor necessarily, but just about every elected Democrat I know has a vision of America that's diametrically opposed to what we would consider to be core, fundamental philosophical principles which inform the founding of this country. So what am I supposed to do with that? I've seen it before.
Unify with an arsonist.
What does a unifying speech even look like?
Well, wait a second.
To people?
I remember sitting there and having fun conversations and trying to get along and thinking that, you know what, we've found some common ground on some issues and maybe there's something there that is still that common thread among Americans. And then you show up to the floor the next day and nope, you're just a vile, racist, sexist, bigoted, whatever. And so I've gotten to the point. So I've gotten to the point where even when someone's being nice to me on that other side of the aisle, because I've sat in the legislature, right? Even when somebody's not, I know that is the moment it's convenient, the moment it's politically convenient, I go right back to being an evil, horrible, no good, whatever. And so I'm tired of it. Like I'm
Apparently
not wasting
Trump's
any more time.
Speaking again.
He is.
Some people are saying that Trump's back. Trump's speaking again. Can you check and see?
Christian's going to try to find it. But here's the point. Like, again, to the point, look, I don't want to be hostile toward other Americans. I don't want that. But if you have a worldview that insists upon a particular view of America that is diametrically opposed to my own, well, then one of us is going to have to win. Do you understand? Like, that's it. You haven't given me an option where we can peacefully adjudicate problems. When the moment what you want to do falls flat on its face due to logic or due to evidence presented, or the moment I question what you want to do and you say you don't get a seat at the table because you're an evil, straight white man. What am I supposed to do with that? How am I supposed to unify with that? They don't want unity. They want to win.
No, they want obedience is what
yes.
they want.
And it's like I've just learned over time that anybody that is willing to sit down, and this is the difference that you see with people like Tulsi Gabbard, RFK. This is the differences you're starting to see with people like Bill Maher. Bill Maher and I have a very, very different view of the world. The difference is, I would say this, I don't think Bill Maher believes that logic is a racist, construction of the patriarchy, right? We can actually analyze facts and data and come to conclusions about what works and what doesn't work. And maybe we'll disagree a lot, but he's not going to end every argument with, if you don't do what I want, you're a racist bigot. And I'm sorry, nobody gets to tell me who sits there every year in the legislature and sees it, that's not what's going on. It absolutely 100% is.
I'd like to know how anybody thinks we unify with someone, with anyone. Like how does that even look to try to unify these two sides?
I can tell you.
One side that thinks it's okay to mutilate children, one side that thinks it's okay to murder children in the womb, one side that thinks it's okay to let rapists go out and do the raping, okay? One side that totally is soft on pedophiles. How do we go and be like soft and unifying to these people? No, we are at the point where there is no more unification in this area because there is no common ground. If there's no common ground, then where's the unification? Mm-hmm. So at this point, you're either with us or you're against us, and now it's a matter of us needing to just win.
The only way that you unify is if we go back to the Mitt Romney days, which, if you recall, Mitt Romney was also called evil, racist, fascist.
Evil racist.
Yeah, he was Hitler. He was whatever, right? Like, I mean,
but we've learned the lesson. There is no unification here.
No, somebody said that Trump, Putin, and Musk is doing a press conference live right now. Okay, no. Christian, can you try to look this up? See what I mean, I'm sure this is a joke, but just go in and take a look.
No, he's currently shaking hands with members of Congress.
Okay.
So can we actually talk about this speech? Because apparently this was the longest speech given to a joint session of Congress
I think that's probably accurate.
in televised history,
Yeah.
beating out a speech given by Bill Clinton. So, I mean, that's quite spectacular if you think about all the ground that he covered. Was there anything in particular that kind of stood out for you guys? Because there were certainly a few things that stood out for me. I think he covered all the bases. He talked
He covered
about
everything we thought he was going to talk about.
and more, to be honest.
Yeah. He went into a lot more detail on some of those things that I was anticipating. I thought he would cover maybe 2 or 3 things that Doge had done, but no, he's like read off like 15.
I'm pretty sure I had a full blackout on my bingo card.
Yeah, Tina did.
I genuinely think this was the greatest speech that he's given.
No,
that
I
I've
think
heard,
that's accurate.
Certainly.
I think that's accurate. I mean, obviously there's been rallies and stuff like that where he's spoken out that I think has been, but overall, this is probably one of the most comprehensive speeches that he's given. He didn't hold back. He drew distinctions. He talked about the success that the administration has had in the first 43 days, I think he said.
Mm-hmm.
And then the thing that he ended on that I did find was pretty inspiring was this idea of once again calling out Americans to really to have lofty goals. And look, I think for a lot of people, it's been this idea that so many people, not just Democrats, some Republicans too, have almost acted like America's future is somewhat of in decline, and rightfully so, because of all the evil things within our past. And that really our goal at this point should be to be making amends with everybody that we've just been so horrible to throughout time. And I've noticed that the people that insist on us making these amends always do so and always set up things in such a way as to gain additional political power as we're doing it. Everything's a good first step, right? There's no reconciliation.
The struggle sessions never end.
Yeah, the struggle sessions never end. And that's why I say, look, I kind of feel like we didn't ask for this fight, but it kept getting pushed at us. And what has finally happened is we've realized, oh, this is a fight. This isn't about civility. This isn't ultimately about us all coming together and singing Kumbaya with one another. Because these two worldviews, because these two visions of America are so diametrically opposed, one has to win, which means the other has to fail.
It's a cultural battle to the end. Like it's, I mean, it's exactly what you said, that there is no coexistence with a side that has a totalizing worldview. The left has a totalizing worldview. Here's the problem. They don't grant the moral legitimacy to competing worldviews to even exist. No. And if you want proof of it, go look at what they're saying about Russia and Ukraine right now. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason have you noticed that it's the left that have become the neocons, the new neocons? Yeah. Like, all of the former old Bush era neocons, what's interesting is like Bill Kristol was coming out today tweeting about trans rights. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
All the people that apparently objected to Trump on conservative grounds have now become progressives through and through.
No, I think it's fascinating.
The thing is that they've retained their neoconservatism, but they're no longer neoconservatives. They're like neo-progressives. Yeah. And I mean, what they're doing is they're going out there saying like, no, we need to wage war on other ideologies, other regimes, because they're not liberal enough. They're not left-wing progressive enough. Obviously, like, somebody once said that the way that politics has devolved recently is it's the left versus everything else, the rest. Yeah. And the rest is not cohesive because the rest is quite literally everything from your Christian conservative in Iowa to North Korea. Yeah. Right? Or the Taliban. Yeah. Or like, obviously there's a broad spectrum that describes the rest. But the left does have this totalizing worldview in the sense that it does not accept a multipolar world, ideologically speaking. Everybody must become a progressive from their standpoint, or else you must be destroyed. And I think what's happened is that people on the right have increasingly, in COVID and the 2020 riots and everything that happened after that, plus the Biden administration, that whole 4-year period from 2020 until last year, I think really red-pilled quite a lot of people.
Oh, I agree.
Like a tremendous millions of people.
There was a number of people that you would have considered on the left, right? They consider themselves left of center. This is why I bring up Bill Maher as an example of this. Bill Maher and I are not going to agree on welfare policy, but Bill Maher still thinks logic works. Like Bill Maher doesn't think that because you think you're a woman, all of a sudden you are, and you should be able to have access to all of their sports and everything else. Because there was a common thread. There was some common underpinnings of Western civilization that we did agree on, and we agreed to some degree were absolute. And so that provided a basis whereby you could have civil discourse and civil disagreement. Sean asked the question, how do we have one side win and the other side fail without avoiding a civil war? Well, I will tell you right now, Sean, that I think the reason why the left has completely lost their mind over Doge and the reason why they're fighting over every single federal expenditure, no matter how absurd it can be, the reason why every single Democrat senator voted against a bill that simply said, women get to compete in women's sports, women get to use women's locker rooms without men coming into it, is because they have doubled down on a particular worldview and philosophy. And the moment they feel like they give an inch, it all comes crumbling down. And what they see in Doge is the recognition that so much of the worldview, so much of what they're pushing runs counter to what the vast majority of people think actually makes sense. And the only way it's been able to sustain itself to the degree it has is because literally, this is what we're finding on a daily basis with Doge, literally billions of your tax dollars were going to fund left-wing ideological objectives both domestically and overseas. They had set up this patronage system, both within the bureaucracy, within NGOs, within 501c3s, where you're the politician that passes the bill to allocate the funds to the executive branch agency. That gets picked up by a permanent bureaucrat who now gets to pass it off to a ideologically friendly NGO to go off and do DEI scholarships to a military junta in Burma. Like, how does that make? Show me the right-wing equivalent of that. Show me the billions of dollars that were, show me where we took billions of tax dollars and then gave it to conservative organizations or NGOs in order to achieve conservative ideological outcomes. It just didn't exist. Not on anything approaching what has actually been happening on the left. And so I honestly believe the way that we're going to avoid any sort of like actual conflict on the streets here is the more money that is ripped away from from elements of a federal bureaucracy that should never exist, the more money we rip away from all of these ridiculous grants going out to push left-wing ideology, the more we're going to realize how much of this movement was actually astroturfed. And then the final part that I'll say that I think is incredibly important right now is that we transfer about $1 trillion a year in this country between local, state, and federal taxes, $1 trillion a year from taxpayers to higher education. Higher education, which, by the way, controls a significant portion of the credentialing from education to media to arts and entertainment, these culturally shaping institutions. And what are they using with that money? What are they using with those resources? What are they using with that time in order to, quote, educate our children? Is that all benign? Are they just teaching them basic life skills that are necessary for getting by in a civil society and being economically self-sufficient? No, that's clearly not what they're doing. And then you go into the liberal arts departments, you go into the education departments of higher ed, and what do you find? You find some of the most radical left-wing staff and faculty anywhere in the university. And they're the ones developing the curriculum and credentials for our teachers, which then go into the public school system. And we wonder, where is all of this coming from? And I'm telling you, it would not be possible. It would not be possible in what would be considered a level playing field in the market of ideas if it was just a question of all of us going out and debating and considering and contemplating. There's no way left-wing ideology, and especially in its current manifestation, would be able to survive that. So how do they do it? They're reallocating your tax dollars away from the things that you thought it was being spent on to that. And so I think that's what's going to happen. I think the more money that gets ripped away from these things, which were not legitimate functions of government, the more we're going to find that, oh my gosh, this was not some mass organic movement. It's not that tens of millions of Americans got up one day and said, you know what, drag queen story hour is a great idea. That's definitely something that we should be advancing and encouraging within society. That didn't happen. This was all being pushed very strategically. And now that they're going to lose the money for it, I think you're going to see the support dry up for it just as quick. And you know what? Thank God. Couldn't come a moment too soon. Okay, Blake asked Nick, I have an honest question. Why don't you run for a Senate seat? I actually did once. I ran in a Republican
people have
primary.
spoken,
I ran in
and
a
it's not
Republican
happening
primary,
and
in
they must be
Virginia.
punished.
I lost it. Yeah.
Isn't that how that works, right? The
So,
people have spoken, and now
Yeah.
they must be punished.
Yeah.
He lost to Corey Stewart here
Yeah.
in Virginia, and
Yeah.
We just, let's be honest, we have no shot in Virginia until the federal government is emptied out, right? Until DC gets the Carthage treatment. Virginia's a blue state. I mean, Virginia voted more for Kamala Harris than it did for Hillary Clinton in 2016.
I do think that there's going to be significant changes in Virginia,
Mhm.
potential to be significant changes in Virginia within the next 4 years that could.
But that'd be over the medium term, not
Hey,
short
can
term.
we talk real quick about the fact that the Democrats all held up those little signs that looked like they were at
Yeah,
an
that was the most
auction?
pathetic
Yeah.
thing I've seen.
Okay. Everybody knows, like, even recently, we were doing a little photo shoot, and I'm like, Nick, hold this sheet of paper so we can, like, put things on it. And he
I
goes,
said,
I will
"No."
not do that.
Nope.
No, because people could Photoshop whatever they want on it. Well, the internet does not disappoint. They have already Photoshopped all kinds of those
Oh, yeah.
pictures, and I put them in the MTA Slack channel. They're pretty great. Basically, everything they were accusing Trump and everybody else of doing, they just put I do that,
Yeah,
which is actually very, very true.
Yeah.
And there was even one with Ilhan Omar, one next to her head, saying Mary's her brother.
Yeah.
And
Oh, this is not going to. Here's the other thing too that has taken place that it is really causing the Democrats a lot of problems, and it's one of the reasons why they've tried to maintain this stranglehold over social media. Is when we say the left can't meme, part of what we mean by that is the left is kind of a humorless group.
yeah,
It used to be that there were funny liberals.
No, they're very puritanical.
There are no funny leftists, right? And this has become increasingly evident as time goes on. And so the fact that new media, has had such a major impact, the fact that again, it's once again free to kind of mock this. That's been, again, it's had an impact that goes way beyond just entertainment or comedy. It's actually impacting the way that we discuss these things. Whitfield, thank you for the super chat, because can you ask Congress and Trump administration to repeal daylight saving? So I don't know if I told you the story,
Nick
Whitfield.
has tried many times.
I've tried twice. I carried another bill for it this year. in Virginia. But you're right. It's going to take more of a federal effort, because a lot of the states, especially states that are close to DC, or they don't want to, or state people living on the border with other states, they don't want to get rid of it unless other states are doing it as well, because otherwise it kind of messes up like job times and things like that. It just is what it is. Oh man. All righty. Coco Watch says, what if they identify as being funny, like Amy Schumer? Yeah, that's the problem. Like left-wing comedians ended up doing, again, they didn't do comedy. They did struggle
killed
sessions.
Comedy. They
Did
killed
struggle
comedy.
sessions. Yeah.
And then everybody that they canceled is now back,
Yeah.
and they're in charge of comedy again.
Big time. Big time. What can be done to flip the states that are so blue? I'm in Delaware, and it's never even close to flipping, even though it's hard to find someone happy with the way the state is run. Here's what I would tell you. Here's what I would tell you about that. We actually did a whole episode on, is it time to leave your state? And here's what I would say. I completely understand why people that absolutely love their state, they might have deep family roots there, they never want to leave their family. I understand why people want to stay. They want to fight it out. Understand something. Having seen the way things work on a state level, you can almost see when a state has reached kind of a point of no return. And that doesn't mean it can't be saved eventually. Right. And if you're one of the people that said, nope, I'm going to be the remnant, right? I'm going to be the remnant that is here when the state is finally ready to make a correction. I completely understand and respect that. I think other people, you've got to ask yourself an honest question, and that is, how much do you want to put up with this stuff versus moving to a state where they're actually going to reflect your values? Because ultimately, we're flying high pretty right now, or flying pretty high right now, right? We've got Trump in the White House. We've got the House. We've got the Senate. We got a favorable Supreme Court. And so I think things are going as well as they possibly could be at the federal level right now. There's going to be other times, right, where you might find yourself in a situation where it's going to be incredibly important that there is a block of really strong conservative states that are willing to stand up to the federal government and overreaches in federal power. And so you've kind of got to decide for yourself, to the extent that you want to stay in a very, very blue place. Here's what I would tell you. understand that you're probably not taking back the legislature anytime soon. And then if all you're doing is fighting for some of these seats where you're staffing it with really, really weak Republicans, then you're not actually providing an alternative. In fact, what you're really doing is you're creating an incentive to be a weak Republican. And then you get to this point where even if you do take control of your state or you win back one chamber, all of a sudden you find Republicans doing things that Democrats were doing 10 years ago. And it doesn't actually present a genuine option. So what I would say is that if you're in a deep blue state, I think it's far more powerful in the long term to find local offices that you can win, where you can have a big impact, things like school board, things like your board of supervisors, and then find the seats within the General Assembly or within your state legislature where you can actually have a core group of people that will draw a distinct contrast. You're looking for people that can stand up, make the argument. California has some great people that do this right now. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for drawing a contrast. So when you do get to the point where people are so fed up that they can actually make a change, they have something to actually rally behind. The other thing I would say is this. Education. Look, I'm sorry. I am not one of those people that believes that we're going to be able to save government-run education by just showing up to more school boards or winning, the occasional school board seat. I'm not saying you shouldn't fight over that if that's your passion, but I think it's about time that more parents, to the extent possible, but really need to make it a priority to pay more of an active investment in their child's education. I know that once upon a time, you can send your kids off to the local public school that you attended, and you can be reasonably certain that your values were going to be somewhat reflected, or at least it wasn't going to be hostile. What I need to tell you is that a lot of that has changed within our public school system, and I'm not claiming that every teacher is a horrible person. Like, I don't care how many times I caveat this, people get mad about it. It is what it is. I sit on the education committee in the Virginia House of Delegates. I see what's going on. And yeah, there's some great teachers and some great administrators that are really trying to make the best out of a bad situation, but it has increasingly become a bad situation. And if you think we're going to improve it by just putting more civics classes in our public school system, if your civics class is being taught by a teacher who's essentially a Marxist, you're probably not going to get the best results out of that civics class. So I think it's time that we appreciate the good teachers that are in there that are fighting their level best to try to provide kids with just a good, education that are focusing on the basics. They're doing the Lord's work. But you need to take a closer look at what your child's being taught. Because if you're sending them off to an authority figure for 8 hours a day, right? And it may not even be the teacher's fault because they're not the one that decides the curriculum. They're not the ones that decide the lesson plans for everything. So much of that is federal, local, and state mandates. If you're not happy with what's going on in that school, understand that if you're trying to change it through the political process, your kid is probably going to go through their entire education with you having achieved very, very little. And so it may be the best course of action that you can take is to pull your kids out and ensure that they're getting an education that reflects the values that you want them to have. Because if you want better representation, you need better voters. And the only way you get better voters is with better education. So, all righty. There we go. I think that's it. Jason, your shorts are epic. We need a C&D one about JT. Thank you very much. Well, okay. We can probably do that. Let me see. Do you want to wait? Okay. Anyways, I think we've kind of gone through all of this. We're running up on 11:30. Once again, thank you very much for joining us. We still got 3,600 people. But before we wrap the chat, I'm going to give everyone a chance. So, Christian, what's your final closing thoughts?
Well, I was going to ask you and Tina, what was your favorite point or moment of the entire speech?
Okay. So I was reacting in real time. To be honest with you, I would need more time to think about that because there were several moments that some of it was when he was talking about where all the waste, fraud, and abuse is. I felt like that was really important. Anytime he talked about the numbers, kind of where the rubber meets the road, brass tacks.
Yeah.
And so those to me, it's hard to argue with hard facts. And now, of course, the Democrats are probably trying to say that everything was a lie or whatever. But, I'm just going to say the easiest answer, and it will be when Trump called Pocahontas.
Christian.
I think that my favorite part was when he pointed out that like there's nothing I can say or do that would convince these people to clap or cheer, no matter what achievement I bring about, because I think he realizes basically what time it is.
Yeah.
Trump might not be super deep on the philosophy, right? He might not have like read all the political philosophy going back 2,000 years or whatever, but I think that he instinctively understands what politics is boiled down to. I mean, it's like Clausewitz's when Clausewitz wrote on war, he said that I'm summarizing, of course, right? But he said that war is politics by other means. Well, the reverse is also true. Politics is the peaceful adjudication of power, and warfare is the violent adjudication of power. And if you understand that, a lot of what the Democrats have been doing, a lot of what the left has been doing over the last 30, 40, 50, 60 years makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And Trump Trump is quite literally the first Republican in my lifetime that even though he might not have like read all the philosophy, he instinctively understands it because he's lived through it, right? They tried to destroy him. And I'm just so glad that we're beyond this point where we're trying to pander to people who hate us. I think part of the reason we got into this mess is because Republicans get elected and then they try to appeal to people who don't vote for them, who hate them, despise them and their values, and will leverage anything, even your own principles, to their ends.
Yeah.
They will manipulate anything. Again, like I'm seeing Democrats going out there and being like, none of the founding fathers would be supporting Trump. You were telling me 5 years ago that we need to tear down every statue to the founding fathers in this country. I don't want to hear it anymore.
Yeah.
These are the same people that are now making appeals to the Constitution, to precedents, to checks and balances. When did you care about any of these things?
None of them are good faith arguments.
None of them are good faith arguments. None of them are. And the sooner that we stop caring about their arguments and how they manipulate our principles and our values and beliefs to their ends, the sooner we can actually get through this mess and return to some sort of sane, normal, way of living that we used to have. So I that was my favorite part.
I think it's hard to isolate one particular point, because I really love that all the stuff that he called out on Doge. I love this stuff. I love how he repeatedly said over and over, wokeness is dead. We're getting rid of it. And again, because I think it draws this very, very clear line in the sign. I love that he said that one of the greatest threats to our country is this massive unelected bureaucracy. Like I can't emphasize enough how true I think that is with respect to running a free country. But there's a part of me that will always love just the end of that speech the best. Because if you think about what he said in kind of the closing remarks of the speech, he kind of took you through this journey of American history. And he emphasized all of the positive aspects of people coming to a new land and forging a future, and really calling us out that it's now our generation's turn to not only step up and defend what we have, but to now take it to the next, to now do our contribution. And our contribution is not good enough to just preserve. It's to advance it. And I think that's so important, because we have gotten so caught in this idea, we've got to defend, we've got to defend, we've got to defend. Napoleon once said that the logical end of defensive warfare is surrender. And I think what Trump did here is he laid out, I think, the goodness and the purity of the American vision. And now he's giving us additional things that we need to strive for. And it's not just good enough to defend what we have. If we really want to be worthy of the people that came before us, well, then we have to actually strive for the same incredible heights that they did. And so as much as I like all of the other aspects of this speech, I will always love that idea of inspirational America, of America being an inspiration both to ourselves and the rest of the world. And I thought I articulated that very well at the end. And so I'm grateful for that. All right. Once again, thank you all very much for joining. Thank you for all the super chats and the support that you gave to the channel. Also, if you haven't left yet and you're interested, please consider liking, subscribing. If you haven't already, it's always very, very much appreciated. One of the greatest ways that you can actually support the show. Again, we do Making the Argument podcast every Tuesday and Wednesday. Every Tuesday and Thursday, episodes of Making the Argument. The Y Minutes comes out on Wednesday, as well as Doge Watch, where we do about a 15 to 20 minute summary of everything Doge has been doing for the week. Please consider going giving us your comments, giving us your input. Also, if you'd be interested in joining our larger community, you can find the link in the descriptions for joining what we call the IC. That's not the intelligence community in our world. It's the intentional community, because that's what we're trying to build here. Once again, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.